go ahead and open this meeting. Today is February 15th, 2024, our February meeting of the Cannabis Compliance Board. Before we do a roll call, I just wanted to take a few minutes and I want to thank Dr. Young for his service on this board. I got the pleasure of working with Dr. Young, and he's moving on to, continue his day job. So I got the opportunity to work with him for about a year, and it was a pleasure. We were both in the north, so sometimes it was just the two of us and staff up there, but it was a good time. So I want to thank him for welcoming me up there and teaching me the ropes from up north. And Dr. Young, he didn't say much, but when he did, you knew it was important. So I thank Dr. Young, and I also want to, welcome Dr. Vicky Mazzarana, and she comes from the newest appointment from our governor, and I am excited, and I want to give you a big welcome. Dr. Mazzarana has a very impressive resume, and including, let's see, she received her undergraduate degree from the University of Illinois, her MD from Rush Medical College, her MBA from Louisiana State University. She has medical training from some of the top universities. She's been an emergency physician for almost 3 decades, and that says a whole lot. And a ringside physician for the Nevada State Athletic Commission since 2008. So I bet you have some interesting stories there. And if that's not enough, she also serves on the National Disaster Medical Team and on Nevada Search and Rescue team, and now here on our board. And so I'm looking forward to working with you, and I welcome you, and I'm sure that everybody's got really good things to say to welcome you as well.
Thank you for that introduction, and I appreciate being on this board. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and get a roll call. Oh, real quick, a small housekeeping item. We have a petition filed pursuant to Senate Bill 277, and that's actually agendized as item number 8. We have to clear the room for that because of confidentiality issues, and so we want to go ahead and move that to go into closed session, and we'll do that right before item 7. So instead of doing it as item 8, we'll do it right before item 7 and after item 6, of course. So we'll just make that small change because we do have to clear the room. So I think that's a very good time to do that. But other than that, we'll go ahead and have a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Call the roll. Chair Guzman Freilich.
Here.
Vice Chair Durrett.
Here.
Member Douglas.
Here.
Member Merritt.
Here.
And new member Dr. Mazzarana.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum and everyone's here.
Thank you. Okay, we will go on to public comment. Just a reminder, we have a pretty robust agenda this morning. So if we can limit our public comment to 3 minutes, and then also we have public comment online as well, and we'll have a little instruction for that. So before we go on to online, we'll go ahead and have public comment in the South.
Chair, before we begin comment, I'll read the joining information.
Great, thank you.
To provide public comment via telephone, call 669-444-9171. Enter webinar ID 826-3339-7753, followed by passcode 941216.
Yeah. Good morning. You have a very impressive resume. I'm so happy to see new faces on the board, so thank you. Good morning to everyone in this room and those who are watching. My name is Rachel Lee, and my company is Sunflower Compassionate Company. Today, I thought I'll show up to a meeting so that I may continue to address some issues that I'm facing directly to the board. To make it short, the required 200K is not something that social equity would have. The rules contradict social equity definition. How minimal is it that a social equity applicant has 200,000 and continue to reside in an area that was affected by the war on drugs? Ask yourself this question, and I would like to know your answer. What it feels like to me is another source of being denied an opportunity to thrive. Also, a while back, I was told that I was the face of social equity. I really want to know for whom. See, I mentioned mental health and this entire process, and I'm thankful that I can realize when my mental health is at stake. In this process, I faced and avoided multi-state operators, scammers, predatory agreements, and even people who didn't want to work with me if I wasn't moving fast enough for them in business or in recovery. And my least favorite of connecting with their organizations that would place me in the line of multi-state operators. I think I was supposed to heal as soon as I received a provisional license. My brain did not get that memo. I think my daughter, who just left the shelter in Los Angeles, was supposed to be healed on the same day I was granted provisional opportunity. My son was supposed to recover, and my mother's Alzheimer's was supposed to be better. And I suppose I was supposed to recover, and my therapy was no longer needed. For the record, my first attempt in getting to the cannabis to any predatory agreement, just not to lose their opportunity entirely. In Arizona, as I follow their process closely, I hope Nevada does not fall for the social equity program I hope Nevada's social equity program does not end up like Arizona's social equity program, where only 1 out of 26 social equity applicants were able to move forward in ownership and is now in operations. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Acres 41 for continuing to help me fight for social equity. Thank you. Have a good day.
Additional public comment in the South? Okay. Seeing none, then we'll go ahead and go to the North. Any public comment? Before we go to Carson City, we've got one public comment in the South.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. I'm Sheldon Mudd. I'm the director of the Northeastern Nevada Regional Development Authority, and we're responsible for economic development in Lander, Eureka, Elko, and White Pine counties. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you have an opportunity to kickstart an entirely new segment within rural Nevada, an entirely new industry segment. This will create jobs, diversify the economy, and generate new revenue streams for our rural communities. An immediate ROI. This can be done today with the adoption of NCCR 537 and 39 as outlined in item 6 of your agenda. You see, we've been waiting a long time for these and the opportunities that they bring, and we appreciate the CCB staff for bringing these regulations to light today. You see, economic development's not easy in rural Nevada. Unlike our urban counterparts, it does not happen organically, and we must put 1,000% more effort just to yield a fraction of the results of what is realized in Nevada's more populated areas. Now, this happens for several reasons, but just to highlight a few. Urban areas have more building options, better infrastructure, workforce availability, advanced medical facilities, education options, variety shopping, and the list goes on. I contend, much to the chagrin of my counterparts in the urban areas, that economic development organizations in these places could cease operations and no one would notice the difference. This is because you've created an ecosystem by which economic development happens organically. And that's great. That's exactly what we want. Rural Nevada economic development professionals, however, have to convince prospective companies to overlook all of these attractive incentives in favor of our limited assets, which amount to affordable land, logistic positioning, and motivated community leadership. As a result, we often get overlooked and passed by. But the adoption of the proposed regulations today will be one step towards mitigating that. We don't have too many tools at our disposal, but what we do have, we must leverage heavily in order to appeal to new business and industry. These regulations, as outlined in Section 6, give us one more tool, one more mechanism that can be deployed in order to create a pathway for economic sustainability in rural Nevada. Please, we've waited 3 years for these today. Please don't make us wait any longer. Adopt these regulations so we can start redefining Nevada's rural economy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, CCB board members and Executive Director Home. My name is Bob Karolko. I'm the CEO of Silver Lion Farms. White Pine County is now well into year 3 of working with the CCB staff and this board to secure its lone medical cannabis license, do it as required by NRS 678B.220. The 2018 law states that the rural counties shall be given one of each type of license. I know Senator Gokachia is trying to call in this morning, and he's got some comments as well, really just to speak to the legislative intent and how the law was drafted. Concerning NCCR 5, given the shall language in the law, I'm not aware of anyone who disputes that the law is clear and that these licenses must be made available to the rural counties. But the how it gets done has been disputed by parties wishing to achieve a myriad of agendas. These regulations to open the licensing have been written, rewritten, feedback solicited from the industry, workshopped, voted on multiple cycles. Today, this body has the opportunity to remedy this multi-year disenfranchisement of the rural counties with a yes vote. You know, I was watching the United States Supreme Court justices hear live arguments last week, and the topic of shall language emerged in their questioning. The justices quickly affirmed that shall means shall. It means that shall is an imperative command. It means mandatory without discretion. It's time that this body act on the intention of the Nevada legislature and lead on this issue to achieve the legal requirement of making the licenses available to the rural counties. If the regulations written in good faith by staff have what a board member considers to be a poison pill item, I suggest this body make a motion to strike that item and proceed with the vote accordingly, and continue with motions and votes until the mandatory imperative is achieved. Today, an analogy. To drive home the point, let's say the Nevada legislature in its infinite wisdom passed a law that says that CCB Executive Director Hum shall have an ice cream cake at his government-sponsored birthday party every year. The birthday cake, the ice cream cake, is the imperative command. It would be completely unacceptable that the board would not have an ice cream cake for his birthday as per law, because the board couldn't agree on whether to serve the slices of the ice cream cake on plates or in bowls. That's the how. We've already missed too many birthdays now, 2 so far. And in this analogy, I want Executive Director Hum to have his ice cream cake. What matters is the ice cream cake is served. It matters much less so whether it is served on a plate, served in a bowl, or we simply eat it with our fingers. It's time this body honor the Nevada legislative imperative on this matter and pass NCCR Regulation 5 this morning. White Pine County sure is this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Donna Bath, and I'm talking to you today as a White Pine County citizen. I've been a lifelong member of our community. I love rural Nevada, and I wanted to also expand on some of the comments that Mr. Mudd made. He works diligently for us. You may or may not know that White Pine County at one time was the largest populated community in Nevada. We were larger than Vegas. However, at the turn of the century, from the turn of the century until 1973. From 78 to 83, our population declined when Kennecott closed our mine. And we lost 1,600 jobs, amortized out by 4, that's half of our population. Our community struggled financially until 95 when the mine was purchased again. However, in 1999, discouraged by the falling copper prices and the high operating costs, the mine closed again. This round of closure took another 433 jobs out of our community. That doesn't sound like much in Las Vegas, but from Ely and rural Nevada, that's huge. That's friends and neighbors that moved and they're gone. In 2001, we lost another 900 jobs when another mine closed down. Our sales tax drops an average of 37% per month. We're already working on a 3% tax base because we're 97% government owned. In 2004, the tax revenue lagged so bad that the county government's financial condition worsened, and our county was placed under the receivership of the Nevada Department of Taxation. We were under the Nevada Department of Taxation from 2004 till 2009. They released us on probation, and we were placed on a probationary period for another 5 years till 2014. White Pine County cannot continue on this path. I've worked on this project for 4 years. And as a citizen, I love and I want to remain in Ely. And I invite you to come. We are a lovely community and we are good people. And I just ask you, please find a way to get this done so that we can move on and prosper in our community. And thank you very much.
Additional comments in the South before I go up to Carson City? Okay. Any comment in Carson City?
There's no comments in Carson City.
Thank you. We'll go online. Any comment online?
If you wish to provide public comment, dial *9 to raise your hand. Caller with the last four numbers 1620. Please state your name before providing your comment. Dial *6 to unmute. Dial *6 to unmute.
Do we have somebody on the phone?
We do, yes. Caller with
Okay,
the
thank
last
you.
four numbers 1620. Please state your name before providing your comment.
I think we're having some technical difficulties with our caller. Do we have a way of calling back that number? Do we have a full number or is it just the last four digits?
It's the last four digits.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and remove their permission. Oh, they seem to have muted again. Caller, go ahead.
Senator Gogachia. I saw something.
I believe they're having difficulty connecting, Chair.
Okay. Well, I do want to give the senator an opportunity to speak on the record. Sure. I'll ask our DAG here how we do this without leaving the agenda item.
Can we also confirm that there isn't any other callers for public comment and maybe circle back?
There are no other callers for public comment.
Okay,
I can give them one more. Oh, they've unmuted again. Caller, go
Okay.
ahead.
Go ahead and speak. Do you want to speak up? Yeah, it looks like we're having some difficulty here. Oh, wait, I see something. Senator, are you on the phone? Shoot. It's not working. Okay. I think did you want to try calling him and see if you can get a hold of him? Okay. I think we can do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
fine.
that. Oh, here we go. Can you speak up? Yeah, no, it's not working. Okay. We'll wait a minute and see if that happens. We can get him on the phone. I think he's still on the phone.
Are you there, Pete?
Go ahead.
Hi, Senator. Uh-oh. We're having technical difficulties.
I'm sorry, this is the court reporter. If we're still on the record, I can't hear whoever's speaking.
We're off the record for a minute. We're having difficult technology issues, so. Well, we do have an opportunity for public comment during the actual agenda item, so we'll come back to that. It's not that we didn't try, so we'll if he wants to call in during the actual agenda item, we'll have his public comment during that time too. Okay. All right, we will go ahead and then move on to our meeting minutes, the approval of our January 18th, 2024 Cannabis Compliance Board meeting minutes. If everybody has had an opportunity to review the minutes and there are no concerns or questions, then I will entertain a vote for the approval of the minutes.
Member Douglas, for the record, I would move to approve those minutes.
Now, first, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Dr. Mazarana. Okay, any discussion on the motion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed, motion carries. Okay, we've got the approval of the minutes. Next, we'll go for the into item number 3 on the agenda, which is the consideration of a proposed amended settlement agreement to resolve disciplinary action. And do we have staff who's going to do a presentation on this?
Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Chair, Vice Chair, Dr. Mazarana to the board. For the record, L. Christopher Rath, Senior Deputy Attorney General. I'll be presenting item 3A, which is an amendment to the settlement agreement for the Harvest Foundation, CCB case number 2021-5. The original settlement agreement is attached to the amended settlement agreement that you have before you. By way of very brief review, in that previous settlement agreement, which you approved in July 2023, the respondent admitted to 1 Category 1 violation, Category 2 violation, 3 Category 3 violations, and 6 Category 5 violations. The licenses had been summarily suspended previous to that, and then went into receivership with Kevin Singer as the cannabis receiver. The licenses have been non-operational since the latter half of 2021, so they have not been generating any revenue. Pursuant to paragraph 11 of the original settlement, the parties are allowed to amend the agreement. Parties are defined as the CCB and the Harvest Foundation. The parties have agreed to the amendment before you, subject to its approval. The only amendment to the original agreement is to reduce the civil penalty amount from $200,000 to $30,000. The remainder of the original settlement agreement stands, with the exception that the CCB also agreed to extend the date Harvest required transfer of interest application. The reason for the amendment are set forth in the amended settlement agreement. Mr. Singer, as receiver, has exercised considerable efforts to sell the licenses. However, given the current market conditions for selling cannabis cultivation licenses and other factors, $100,000 was the best price the receiver could attain. And in addition, the receiver and his counsel owed over $100,000 for their efforts during this receivership. This amendment will allow them to recover some money for their services. I'd note it's generally public policy to allow for a cannabis receiver to receive some remunerations for his work, or it's going to be difficult to get cannabis receivers, which are needed, and we keep seeing more of these. The amendment allows for this and still allows the licenses to be transferred to new owners, which hopefully will run the operations much better than the prior owners. For those reasons, the Attorney General recommends and requests that the board approve this amendment to the settlement agreement. I'm here for any questions, as is Mr. Singer and his counsel, John Savage.
Thank you. Welcome, gentlemen. Do you have an affirmative presentation before we bring it to the board for questions?
Good morning, Executive Director Hum, members of the board, John Savage on behalf of Kevin Singer, the court-appointed receiver over the Harvest Foundation. Just like to thank the board and Mr. for their flexibility and
I'm
consideration.
sorry, sir, can you stay close to the microphone? You keep cutting out.
Yes, sorry, my apologies. I was just thanking the board and Mr. Rath for considering this amendment and potentially being flexible on the civil penalties that were imposed. All of these receiverships present different challenges. This one, the receiver stepped in while the licenses were under summary suspension and was able to reach a disciplinary settlement, and has undertaken great efforts to try to transfer the license to a responsible owner. We have a motion pending with the receivership court to approve the sale of the license, subject to the board's approval of a pending transfer of interest. That motion has been set for Chamber's calendar, February 28th. That motion also asks the court to approve this amendment to the settlement agreement. And I believe that if the board approves settlement agreement, the condition upon the receivership court's approval. And just among some of the other efforts that the receiver undertook to preserve the licenses and maintain the viability of the license, he did have to come out of pocket for significant expenses, including, I think it was $11,000 in June to renew the licenses, and significant marketing efforts, appearances, and receiver reports. And so we do appreciate the board's consideration.
Good morning, board. And just to add to John's
I'm sorry, can I get your name, please?
Sure. Kevin Singer, the court-appointed receiver. Yeah. And just to add Mr. Savage's presentation, we marketed this license for over a year, far and wide, to try to find a buyer. But sometimes it's challenging with the grow license under disciplinary action to find a buyer. We even went so far as to do an auction and start the opening bid at $25,000. I know Mr. Rath was present for that, and we could not get a bidder to bid at $25,000. After that auction was done, I think we got lucky. We found an angel buyer. He seems like a very good, reputable person, and he seems like he's the right fit. Obviously, this case was not profitable for myself or Mr. Savage, but we want to let the board know that we're committed to every project we take to make sure and get a responsible buyer in place, which is our ultimate goal.
Thank you. So I understand then the transactions, what's going to happen here is basically MMNV2 Holdings will be transferring to Mustang Two Mounts LLC, and then Mustang will just turn right around and transfer to TGNV LLC.
Chair, that's the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
And I apologize.
Oh.
The transfer of interest application that would be subject to this receivership has not yet been submitted. We were waiting for the court to approve our motion for the sale of the license.
Okay.
And we will have that transfer of interest application submitted either by the end of the month or early next month. And but that is not presently before the board. It's just the amendment to the settlement.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I apologize. Yes. Okay. So that's not, you need to get all this approved first with the court before you can even bring the transfer of interest. Okay. All right. Any additional questions?
Member Durrett, I have a disclosure. Similar to every time this issue has been before the board, I'm going to abstain. I represented a firm that represented, or I was retained as an expert witness by a law firm that represented opposing counsel opposing to this party so long ago that now I'm barely even remember anything about it. But I think out of abundance of caution, I'll abstain. Thank you.
Additional questions from members? Okay. Is there, are there any tax liens attached to this?
I do not believe that there are any state tax. Well, I don't believe there's any tax liens. I do not believe that the Nevada Department of Taxation is owed any taxes. The IRS did submit a proof of claim in our receivership process and received over $1 million of creditor claims. I think the IRS claim was around $50,000 or so. But I don't believe the Nevada Department of Taxation is owed taxes.
And I did run this by the Nevada Department of Taxation. They didn't have any issues with the amended settlement.
Okay.
So they didn't inform me of any issues. So.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions from the board members? Okay, hearing none, then I'll take a motion.
I'm sorry, can you turn your microphone on, please?
Member Douglas, for the record, Madam Chair, this is for the approval of the first amended stipulation in order for settlement of the disciplinary action, which revises the monies to be paid for violations from 200,000 to 30,000. I would make a motion for approval of the amended stipulation of the disciplinary action, which is the only thing before us this morning.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We'll see you when you get back here with your transfer of interest. Okay, we're going to go on to the next item. This is item number 4. And I'll be on the right one, this one. Okay, this is a request for transfer of interest. This is item number A under number 4. And we'll go ahead and have a briefing on this. Thank you.
Chair Guzman Freilich, Vice Chair Durrett, Justice Douglas, Member Merritt, and Dr. Mazarana. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCP. I'm here to present agenda item number 4, which consists of one transfer of interest or TOI application. Item A are TOI applications by Foundry Works Inc., Tetra Gardens LLC. TOIs number 220027 and 230026 were filed requesting approval for Foundry Works to purchase cultivation and production licenses CO25, RCO25, and P016 and RP016 from MedMen Enterprises Inc., and subsequently resell the licenses to Tetra Gardens LLC, owned by Zachary Kozak and Jonathan Levy. Tetra will hold the licenses through its subsidiary, TGNP LLC. The Sparks, Nevada operations are currently operating under a management services contract between Foundry subsidiary Mustang DeMouths LLC and MedMen, which was approved by the board at its September of 2021 meeting. The purchase price is minimal, but will result in Foundry assuming all assets associated with cultivation and production operation, as well as MedMen's outstanding Nevada wholesale tax liabilities of $541,234.16, which will subsequently be assumed by Tetra Gardens when the second TOI is completed. Tetra has already signed a lease agreement with Truckee Canyon PM LLC for the building in which MedMen already operates, but it appears that a component of the lease payment is tied to future sales over a certain amount, and the lease may have to come back before the board for approval since it appears to include a percentage of revenue component. No areas of concern were developed during this investigation. I'm available for any questions, and my understanding is that Zach Kozak and Amanda Connor are available to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Frelick, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good morning, Executive Director, Chairwoman, and members of the board. My name is Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor & Connor, and I am here today with Zachary Kozak, owner of TGNV LLC. And Guzman-Frelick, kind of in your question from the previous item, yes, it is a multi-part transaction. Originally, Mustangs to Mouse through Foundry Works was going to acquire the licenses. They subsequently entered into an agreement to sell that to Tetra Gardens, TGNV. So it is two transfers in front of you today, but ultimately the licenses would be held by TGNV LLC with the owners of Zachary Kozak here and Jonathan Levy. As Mr. Saley aptly pointed out, they will be assuming some serious liabilities that are out there, and they are committed to operating a compliant, successful operation in Nevada, and look forward to coming on board. We are here to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Kozak.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Zachary Kozak on behalf of TGNV LLC. Appreciate the opportunity to be heard this morning. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you. I just have a couple of questions. This facilities in Sparks, correct?
It's actually, my understanding is it's in unincorporated Washoe County as the jurisdiction, but I believe the address says Sparks.
Sparks, okay. And there are how many employees?
Currently, there are 12 employees at the facility. It is not fully operational yet, so that will increase. That is the current number of employees. So,
okay. And just recently, just reading in the trades, MedMen has developed a reputation for leaving their employees high and dry. This is not going to happen in this scenario, correct?
no, it will not.
Okay. I just want to make sure people are taken care of. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the rest of the board. Unless you have additional comments, we'll bring it back to the board and deliberate. Thank you.
Member Douglas, for the record. To our potential licensee, everything on paper as far as you're concerned looks good. However, just clarification, since you're not going to assume liability for the outstanding tax. And I understand the limited amount, the actual sale cost of $1 due to the tax consequences and so on. But the question is, how are the taxes going to be dealt with? And I understand that MedMen has, if I've read this report right, has made some payment, even though they're not obligated under this as to tax, most recent tax. So where are we at with that? The 500 and some odd thousand that's owed to the state?
Justice Douglas, thank you for that question. I believe, and I apologize if it was misunderstood, but they are assuming the tax liability as it carries with the, so that is part of the reason for the low purchase price, as TGNB will continue to pay the tax liability that's out there. And they've been working with the Department of Taxation on a payment plan and making payments towards it.
Yeah, because we had nothing that was submitted to us as of those tax issues and who was doing what. And we understand, since the licensee is not the licensee of record at this, the person coming forward, they
Correct.
can't deal with tax.
Mr. Kozak has been speaking with Deborah Hillebrand at the Department of Taxation. He also worked with Foundry Works. He was an employee there who had the management agreement through Mustangs to Mouse. So they've been in discussions through that management agreement with the Department of Tax on payment plans, and they will be continuing assuming that and paying those liabilities.
Yeah, if this matter goes forward, I don't see a reason why it wouldn't, but I would hope that within a reasonable amount of time, 60, 90 days, we get some follow-up as to what the tax arrangements are submitted back to us, just so we know what's going on.
I am happy to provide staff with an update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions, comments, concerns from board members? Okay, hearing none. I'll entertain a vote or a motion and a vote.
Member Douglas, for the record, I would make a motion to approve the transfer of interest in this particular case. And if I recall, there's no special conditions or anything else, Mr. Staley?
No conditions.
That would be my motion.
There was a 5.112 waiver.
There's a
And
waiver.
I would add,
Yes.
then I would add that to the motion. Thank you, counsel.
Yes, please. Justice Douglas. TGNB did apply for a waiver pursuant to NCC 5.112. So
I'm sorry, Mr. Staley, can you repeat that? You cut out a little bit.
I'm sorry. David Staley for the record. TGNB did apply for a waiver of NCCR 5.0 pursuant to NCCR 5.112. Staff would request that that waiver expire at the date of TGNB's next TOI application for the board.
Thank you.
I'll accept that and make it part of the motion. This is Member Douglas for the record.
We have a motion with the waiver. Do we have a second?
Member Drat, I second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you
And-
so much.
Thank you, and thank you to Investigator Staley staff. They did a great job on this one.
Yes, thank you very much. and appreciate the
Congratulations and good
opportunity.
luck. Thank you. Okay. All right, we are now moving on to item number 5, which is our management agreements. We've got 2 under this agenda item. The first one is a consideration of a rescission of approval of management services agreement. So, Mr. Staley.
Chair Guzman, Freilich, members of the board. For the record, I'm David Staley, Division Chief of Investigations for the CCB. I'm here to present agenda item number 5, which consists of 2 management services agreements, or MSAs. Item A is a reconsideration of an MSA previously approved by the board at its November of 2020 meeting. On November 27th, 2020, the board approved an MSA between Lucid Management LLC and Pure Tonic Concentrates LLC, pursuant to which Lucid has managed Pure Tonic's dispensary operation in Winnemucca, Nevada. The MSA was filed in connection with the TOI application, which provided for Lucid to purchase Pure Tonic's dispensary license. The TOI application was assigned to an agent in March of 2022 who began their investigation and requested numerous documents and information as the investigation progressed. Beginning in January of 2023, Lucid stopped responding to agents' requests for information despite numerous additional requests for information needed to evaluate potential areas of interest or possible areas of concern regarding numerous personal and corporate tax liens in Washington state and other issues. As a result of the applicant's refusal to provide requested information, staff felt it was appropriate to submit the existing MSA to the board for reconsideration. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is that Jacob Ward, Kurt Stitzer, Stanley Jansen, and Thor Hoyt are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman-Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you and welcome. I know we've got some members up north in Carson City on this item.
How you doing? My name is Stanley Johnson. Good morning, board.
Good morning. Okay, who's going to speak first?
Hello, my name is Jacob Ward, and I'm the managing member for Pure Tonic Concentrates. Thank you, members of the board, for your time today. Chief Staley, for your summary of the situation. One point that I would like to add is that the store has been operating compliantly with all taxes paid and everything going well from an operations standpoint since the management contract went into place. So we're working from that platform. We also have some of the same concerns about suitability. We just became aware of these in the last month or so and the impact that may have on the TOI moving forward and what kind of options that we have to clean this thing up. So I think in the end, we would like a little more time to figure that out while we keep the management contract in place. I think the potential outcomes are that we continue moving forward with good communication between Lucid and the investigators and ourselves to complete the TOI as originally intended. I mean, that's what we would like to do. In the event that the suitability issues get in the way of that, we would like to sort out a way that we take over operational control of the store and move forward in that fashion. But there's plenty of details that would have to be sorted out to make that happen. In either of those scenarios, the current contract will end, and that was the original intent anyway. This management contract was designed to bridge the gap in between the initiation of the TOI and to finish the TOI. So I'm hoping that the attention that's being paid now can fast track that and we can complete that. So I would like to request 90 more days to keep the management contract in place, at which point we can come back before the board or whatever the board decides. But I hope that adds some clarity to the situation.
Mr. Ward, I just want to find out where the information is not getting through, because I know our agents have been trying to get a hold of, and I think they've been dealing with Mr. Hoyt maybe. Okay, but there's been some lack of communication. So I want to make sure that who's the final say here and who's going to be communicating with our agents to make sure that we have a point of contact, and so that this doesn't happen to where we're, basically, trying to get somebody to answer us and nobody's answering.
Greg, this is Jacob Ward for the record. Sorry, Stan, I didn't mean to cut you off. This is probably more of a question for Stan. We have the same questions. We've, as far as I know, supplied everything that the investigators have requested from our end. It's more of a question of the information coming from Lucid's end. So, yep. Sorry, Stan.
Thank you. Thor, Lucid was based in Washington. We got hit pretty heavy with COVID. Thor lost his parents. Thor had COVID, kids sick. Little Phil, who was our financial person, he got COVID as well too. Long stints of COVID. Thor was our point of contact. When his father died, mother passed, he moved to the UK. So he was getting information at his house. So total disconnect. Moving forward, I plan to be responsible person for all communication. Once we got the letter from you guys, we provided the CCB with all the information that was missed, compiled financials and the questions about taxes and everything from Thor and Little Phil. On the 6th, on the 8th, we had a meeting with the CCB to go over any gaps or holes in the process. So far as I understand right now, moving forward, we're on track with everything. I'll be communicating with Rachel, I guess, through the TOI process. So it should not happen again. COVID was really rough for us as a whole. And Washington, one of the first states that COVID hit. So, and doing that process as well too, Thor and Littlefield wanted a little bit more clarification on a couple questions asked. They reached out, whatever reason. Yeah, they didn't get a response between the moving around and different things like that. But I have to be responsible for all of that at the end of the day.
I realize too, we have some areas of interest, but I will go ahead and open it up to the rest of the board members for any questions or concerns that they might have. Thank you.
Member Douglas, for the record. Sir, could you state your name again, please?
Stanley Johnson, I'm with Lucid Management.
You're Mr. Johnson.
Yes, I am, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's first clarification. Mr. Johnson, the first question I have is, in some of the conversations and whatnot, is Lucid an actual operating company or not? Because I get reading some of the paperwork says Lucid is not licensed and so on. It's part of an association of companies. And so is Lucid a viable entity, or is it you who is responsible? How does that work?
Thank you. Good question. Lucid is its own management company. Kind of the communication initially thought that Lucid owned marijuana licenses. That's not true. We have operations in Michigan and Washington, but the license is owned, for example, like Pure Tonic owns the license.
Well, the
Lucid-
question is not about the license. It's just about what is the status or the entity.
Well, we're an active corporation.
Okay. Are you duly licensed in the state of Nevada?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the question we have, which is important in this particular state, is that we have information as to who is running a business or participating in a business, and that the viable individuals, if it's appropriate, have come forward for a suitability card and so on. And to our knowledge thus far, no one from quote Lucid has come forward in the original arrangement that was submitted to us. So at some points, as was stated, additional time needs to be given. I'm not into the 90 days, possibly 60 days, to see if we can find out what is really going on, because it's almost like a step back that you're not responsible to come forward, or an appropriate party is to come forward to be found suitable because of only supplying bud tenders and things of that nature. Well, looking at the agreement where you're paying back the owner so much money in the first incarnation, we're curious as to who's actually running the business and
I can
what the
answer.
background is. So those are the things that we'd like to get straight through the department
Oh, I see.
back to the board. So that's
Can I speak on that a little bit? Lucid provided location, build out, expertise, every single aspect except for the license. So we just don't provide headcount. We provide the facilities, we provide everything. Everything, the license is its own, but we provide everything else and have been providing from the beginning. So Lucid is just an individual, and I've been there from the beginning. Pick the location, went through the build out process, design, work with the city of Winnemucca. We've done every single part of every single, as we've done in other states, we've done everything.
So I understand that you provide management for Pure Tonic, but what's the status of the transfer of interest?
We're working through that now. When we signed this original deal with Pure Tonic, I think it was in 19 or 20. The city of Winnemucca had a meeting and they assumed the store would do, $500,000 a month, whatever their thought process based on what the tribe was doing. And naturally the store maybe didn't live up to that number or whatever. So the price that we had yesterday is a different. We have to talk through what does that mean today. Naturally, it took maybe $600,000 or $700,000 more of investment into the building and the facility and different other things that we didn't anticipate. So we're working through that part of it now. But I've been here, and Lucid Management been here from the very beginning. We have the relationship with Winnemucca. We literally create all of the foundation. So we do way more than provide bud tenders, I think is the word.
So is Lucid's intent to continue with a transfer of interest?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Maybe I didn't answer the question. Yes, that is.
Member Durrett, for the record, I don't want to, I definitely wouldn't give any advice, and I don't want to make any, cause any conflict with Thor, but it seems like you might need a better understanding of the Nevada framework. Although, I mean, it sounds like the store is compliant, so congratulations. It sounds like everything's going really well, and that's great to hear. Very much congratulations. I think that it's probably a difficult market to succeed in. I think there is a little bit of a disconnect because there's a little bit of a lack of understanding about what we're asking about the agent card and who's mainly responsible and who's responsible for what. So just look a little further into exactly what's expected from the agency and how to better be in connection with them and make sure. It seems like the front of the house is working really well, but the back of the house administrative stuff needs to be in better compliance. So maybe in touch with somebody from Nevada who knows those rules really well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
We originally started working with one of the reasons it was appealing, a local, I think it was the Millers in Winnemucca. That's a legal firm there, and that didn't work out. So I agree with you. I would definitely get a lot closer to the locals and things. Thank you.
Additional questions or concerns, comments?
Member Douglas, for the record, this was on at some point as a kind of an informational item, trying to get it back on track. I would like to see this matter back before us in 60 or 90 days, whichever is appropriate, and leave it to our staff to see if their questions get answered that we've posed today. As of what's going on, the original thing was money was going back and forth and money was going into trust for the original transfer of interest and to be held. So we just are trying to get an update of status and make sure that everything is operating within bounds. The day-to-day activity seems to be fine. So that's,
They're having a hard time hearing you.
the day-to-day activities don't seem to be a problem. It's just the wonderful details as to a proposed transfer or the actual operation. So I know we're not ready for a motion, but I'm in the stance of giving it back to staff to report back to us in 60 or 90 days, whichever they feel would be appropriate. If we've gotten this thing back on track of understanding if the TOI is still going forward, when that's going to go, or the appropriate people have come forward for purposes of their cards, respective cards.
Any additional comments? We have this item before us, and it's actually the ask here is whether or not to rescind your management agreement, correct?
Yes.
You know, our goal is to make sure that business runs smoothly and everybody's abiding by all the rules, correct?
Yes.
So it's not our goal to take away these management agreements and have everything fall apart. I mean, I think our goal is here, and I can pretty much speak for the rest of the board. We want our businesses to be successful. We want people to be employed. We want people to, make money, including the companies and the managers, operators, what have you. But you have to help us.
I understand.
Help you. We need to do our job, and we can't do that if people are not getting back to us.
I understand.
So there's only so much we can do. So I say that because, we're here to either rescind your agreement or not. And so it sounds to me like, the judge over here wants to give you another chance and have you come back. But we'll see how that goes on a vote. Okay. With that, any additional comments or questions that you might have, or anybody up north? whoever wants to speak, I know you have your partners up in the north as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys showing up time. I understand where my team and my group have failed. We're looking to perform a lot better than we did before. We currently do business in 4 other states. Didn't have this type of problem before. I understand Nevada's on top of things and needed a certain type of way. Much more engaged now. Here today, we'll be present going forward as we work through all the details. I'd like you guys to consider giving us some time to, we bumped our head. Now we're awake now. Like you said, local council, there's some things I need to sharpen up on here. Won't be able to do this remote or out of the country. So I understand that. Just need an opportunity to straighten things out. We've been open over 2 years now. We've won Dispensary of the Year, and in Winnemucca, we've done all the little local attribute things, give back, part of all the committees and council. They're part of the community there. And I'm speaking on Lucid Management, so we actually run things. We view Pure Tonics as a license, right? All the dollars and training and staffing and marketing, we provide all of that. So we're considered the local presence. That's how I see it. Pure Tonics has a license. I understand the disconnect, but I didn't do in the shortcomings of the situation. I want to fix that. We're absolutely what we consider presence in Winnemucca. We provided 20, 30 jobs. It's up and down depending on the season. We hire local people. We train local people. We give local people a chance to learn things in Washington and not just here. So there's a whole plan that we have trying to implement that's good for Winnemucca. Just need to clean this part of things up. And Thor works for me, so it's my responsibility, period. So I plan to do better at that. But we have a whole vision that's bigger than just marijuana. It's how we impact the community, give backs, hiring, jobs. We have a good reputation. You guys can call Winnemucca about all the things that we do and have done. And we'll continue to do as long as we're in place. Thank you for that.
Appreciate that. Thank you for being here. Okay, anybody in the north? Did you want to mention anything or comment?
Thank you again for your guys' time today. And, as us being the license holder, I'd like to reiterate that we have not been completely hands off. We realize that if anything goes sideways, it comes to us first, right? So we've had a heavy focus on compliant operations out there as much as we can. And we physically go to the Department of Taxation once a month and make the payments on behalf of the Winnemucca store to make sure those critical boxes are checked. So yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that. Communication is open now between us and Lucid, and it sounds like between Lucid and the investigators. So I'm confident we can get somewhere that's going to be good for everybody, all parties involved. And so, yeah, again, we ask for more time to get there now that everybody's paying attention. Thank you.
Yeah. And it wasn't for me to take a shot at Pure Tonic. Mr. Douglas referred to us as providing staff or, bud tenders, and I see us on a whole different level. So I was trying to make things clear. I understand Pure Tonic's role. We've been working and investing in things the whole time. So I was just simply saying, hey, here's what we do. Because I get sometime a management agreement at the retail level doesn't tell the whole scope at first blush, right? So I just wanted to kind of make it clear. And the lack of communication on my side, the paperwork didn't explain it the way it really exists. So Pure Tonics, great partner. I've worked with other people on licenses. They're awesome. Wasn't what I was trying to do. Just simply trying to say what it is we do. That's all I was doing.
Understood. Okay. With that, do we have any other comments? And then we'll bring it back to the board.
One more comment. It didn't sound, member direct for the record. You didn't say anything negative about Pure Tonic. I just want to clarify. I'm not recommending that you get local counsel from Winnemucca because there aren't a lot of cannabis establishments out there. Find the best counsel. Maybe they are in Winnemucca, but I would go with somebody who has experience dealing with the CCB. I just wanted to clarify that. And I do think that I'm rooting for this to be a success story because it seems like you're just missing a few elements, but I think it's most important that you protect public safety. And it doesn't sound like there's a concern that there have been any public safety issues. So I'm rooting for you.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm prepared to take a motion.
Member Douglas, for the record, my motion would be that we would not at this time go forward with any rescission of the management service agreement. That we'd bring this matter back in 60 days, if that is appropriate with our staff. And the information is provided for a status as to where they are, an update as to what the specific roles are, because we were getting somewhat of a disconnect, and the status of the proposed transfer of interest, which was part of the regional management services agreement, where that's at. And just for the record, outside of that motion, we had gotten, from Mr. Johnson, we had gotten a letter from someone who was purporting to be acting on behalf of your organization, Mr. Hoyt, I guess it is, yep, of Caldon Law. And he had made representations at some points, indications of what you did or didn't do. So that was our concern and why I categorized what was there. Because he was trying to step around the licensing requirements, indicating that you were just doing this minimalist work. But if we can get this hashed out as to the TOI and also what the role of the parties is and what is the status of Lucid, that would be appreciated. So the motion is not to rescind, bring it back in about 60 days.
And would that be in the form of a status?
A status, if appropriate.
Okay. All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Member Durrett, I second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed? No opposed. Motion carries. Okay, good luck, and we'll wait to hear from you 60 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going on to item 5, number B. And Mr. Staley, if you could give us a rundown on this.
Chair Guzman Freilich, members of the board. Item B is an MSA between GWGA LLC and Underground Management Nevada LLC. The MSA provides for Underground to have broad authority to manage the operations on behalf of GWGA. The MSA was submitted in conjunction with the TOI application, providing for Underground to acquire 100% of the ownership interests of GWGA. CCB staff have reviewed the agreement and found the relationship between the parties appropriate. No areas of concern were identified. I am available for any questions, and my understanding is Sandra Tiffany and Ethan Woods are present today to address any questions you may have as well. With that, Chair Guzman Freilich, I will turn this item back to you.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Any presentation that you have for us?
No, I'm for the record, by the way, thank you, Madam Chair, and board members. For the record, my name is Sandra Tiffany. I'm the owner of GWGA. And the only thing I would like to say is that we've already been in multiple conversations about the transition and how each one of the compliance components are going to be addressed. And I feel very comfortable and confident that the transition will be very smooth.
Wonderful. Do you have?
Ethan Woods, for the record. I'm the owner, operator, CEO of Underground Management. As Sandy said, we've talked about all the different things that we need, not to just cut over the business, but cut over all of the compliance efforts. I will be the responsible party for that. I'm not 100% up to snuff as far as Nevada goes, but I did apply for and was granted.
Including it's Nevada.
Sorry. But I will say that I did apply for and get 8 licenses in California and operated those for 6 years before selling the businesses. They were 100% compliant. We never had an issue. And we do have a staff that is still the same staff. It helps to support me in all of this. So I'm pretty sure that between Sandy, myself, and our staff, we'll be able to handily take care of those compliance efforts.
Okay, thank you. When we have all the appropriate paperwork and our staff did not flag you for any issues, so it looks like everything is in order. So I will I'll bring it to the board for any comments, concerns, questions that you might have. Member Mary, we were just asking if there were any questions from the board members, if you have any questions for the applicants.
No.
Thank you. Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion.
Just one question. Do you have kind of a hope for date of wrapping your process up?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes, the
Member
deadline,
hearing
timeline
timeline for
wrapping everything up.
Sandra Tiffany again for the record. What we're working on right now is the transition. We anticipate it to be maybe 45 days at max, because we want to make sure we have every detail and every personnel lined up before we do that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion?
Member Durrett, I move to approve the management agreement proposed under agenda item 5B between GWGA and Underground Management Nevada.
Member Mazarano seconds that.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Motion carries. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we'll go on to item number 6. And this is the regulations, consideration of proposed adoption, amendment, and/or repeal of the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Regulations. We've got 2 items under that, and go ahead, Mr. Miles.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Excuse me. Good morning, Chair and board members. I'm Michael Miles, Deputy Director of the CCB. We are here again presenting regulations regarding the issuance of medical cannabis establishment license pursuant to NRS 678B 220, Section 3, subsection A. A petition was submitted back in February of 2022 to create these regs. This petition was denied at that time without prejudice. However, another petition was submitted on September of 2022. Again, proposed language was put up for adoption back in December of 2022, which did not go through. CCB held a workshop in April of 2023. These regs were brought up again in front of the board in May and August of 2023. Obviously, again, not passing either time as well. CCB staff also had many meetings with industry and the petitioners regarding these regulations. Due to the difficulty of coming to an agreement on this issue, CCB staff retained an independent expert on the issue. This expert had worked with 20 plus government entities regarding cannabis licensing throughout the country. The expert stated it would be irresponsible of the board to move forward with a solely criteria of merit style application process, as this process had failed all across the country. Experts who were familiar with the Nevada statutes on the subject recommended using a mixture of criteria of merit along with a random number generator style of application process. Furthermore, the experts recommended that the CCB take the county's input into account when awarding a license pursuant to these regs. I would like to stress that these regs can only be used to award a maximum of 8 licenses, 4 cultivation and 4 production, assuming all applicable counties actually request these licenses. NCCR 5.037 details the request process for these licenses from the counties and the application process for said license. The application process grades the set of criteria of merit. The highest score on this grade will be awarded the license. If there is a tie in scoring the random number generator process, if there's a tie in the scoring, a random number generator process will be used to award the license. Once the license is awarded, the prospective licensee will go through a suitability investigation, and if deemed suitable by the board, will be granted a conditional license. NCCR 5.039 lays out these criteria of merit and the points awarded for each criteria. With that, I turn it back to the chair.
Thank you for that rundown. And I had asked staff to, I think a few of us maybe had to ask staff to find out which counties this affected, and basically the total number of licenses that this could potentially impact is 8. So there are 4 counties that do not have cultivation nor production. And this is the counties. So 4 counties that don't have any cultivation or production license that could petition the CCB for these types of licenses. So we're talking about 4 counties that this reg would affect: Douglas County, Pershing County, Story County, and of course, White Pine County, who was the original county who petitioned the CCB. So this is what this reg is talking about. And this is the latest version of the reg, but I think we've done our due diligence in getting all of the stakeholders to have some input and put it through workshops and through adoptions. And so here we are again. So let's do a public comment, and any public comment on this item, and then any board input before we even start deliberating on the issue. So any public comment in the South on this item? I heard, okay.
I was able to contact the senator, and he said he can hear you. He was trying to push *6, that wasn't working. He asked if there was a way that you could call his number.
Okay, and I think we might be able to do that with our IT, or no, we can't do it. No, shoot. Okay.
I will tell him.
Oh, so we're going to try to call from up here again? Okay, we're going to do that.
And do you have the number?
I believe Vice Chair does.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. He better have something really good to say.
Hello? Hello?
Hi there, Senator. It's this is Adriana Guzman Freilich, and we've got the board here and public comment. Did you wish to speak in public comment?
Yes, thank you, Adriana. And how are you this morning? And my apologies to the board. I don't know. Like I say, I could hear you and I could get an echo back when I pushed *6, but apparently you couldn't hear me. So I will offer some public comment right now, or this is public comment, or just comment on the regs.
It's all you right now. Everybody's listening.
Okay, well, I'll just start it off. I'll be brief. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity to make some comments. Senator Pete Goycochea, representing Senate District 19. Senate District 19 is all or part of 6 counties on the eastern side of the state, including a portion of Clark County, and then 6 cities across eastern Nevada. And I'm just going to speak briefly to the legislative intent. You know, it was clear, and I've been in the legislature since '02 continuously, and I think it was, in my belief, it was the legislative intent was that local jurisdictions did have the ability to say yes or no on licensure of a cannabis facility in their jurisdiction. And I know, like, the city of Elko never did approve one, you know, and again, we're not taking it away from the Cannabis Compliance Board. But in this case of with Silver Lion Farms, I know for a fact the Board of County Commissioners, with formal board action, did petition for licensure for Silver Lion Farms and for a cannabis facility in White Pine County. And clearly they recognize the investment that has been made in Silver Lion Farms and what that will do for their tax base as well as their employment opportunities in their county. So I'm just here to speak to the fact that legislative intent is that local jurisdictions were meant to have input into the process. And in this case, White Pine County is petitioning in favor of a cannabis license for Silver Lion Farms. And with that, really, that's really all I've got to say. That my understanding, my belief is, and being in the legislature, that was legislative intent that local jurisdictions would have some input into it. And I think at this point, clearly there is favorable support for Silver Lion Farms from White Pine County. And I would ask that you, in fact, move forward. We've been a couple of years trying to move this forward. I've testified in Carson, and I do appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this by phone. It saves me a 500-mile round trip to Carson, or a little over 6 to Vegas and back. And it is nice to be here pumping water for these old cows and talking to you. But I really appreciate it. But it's just, I wanted to establish that was legislative intent, my belief going forward. And truly, I'm asking that you move forward and recognize White Pine County's input into the process and the fact it is favorable. And please move forward with licensure. It's huge for some of these rural counties, whether they want it or they don't. They should have at least the opportunity to be involved in it. So thank you, and thank you and the board so much. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Senator. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
And everybody be safe.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay. All right. Do we have any additional comment?
Good morning, Amanda Connor with the law firm of Connor and Connor. As Deputy Director Michael Miles indicated and has been discussed, this has been something that has been worked on for a long time. And I think everyone in the industry and outside would like White Pine County to get licenses and move forward. I believe there's been several times when this has come before the board that different individuals, including myself, have come forward and questioned if the statute allows a random number generator in the licensing process. I appreciate that staff went out and got independent advice. I also appreciate all the workshops, and I think a lot of progress has been made. I do have concerns about the random number generator as a tiebreaker. However, I don't believe that given the limited nature this is and the shall language in statute that these licenses shall be issued, that it should hold up this process. But I do think that it is something that needs to be discussed at the legislature before future applications and licensing rounds are opened. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Hi, good morning, Lake Martin, Nevada Cannabis Association. I wanted to ditto everything that Amanda Connor just said and add to that our thanks to CCB staff and to the board for taking so much time to work through this with stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Any comments in the north?
Morning, Chair. Brett Scolari.
Good morning.
Strategies 360. Also just wanted to put on the record, I have also been involved in this process. Wanted to extend appreciation for staff, Mr. Miles, all their work on this. Also appreciate and support White Pine's mission to get this piece of economic development rolling, and do not want to hold that up any longer. Appreciate everyone's time. Just want to reiterate just that lingering concern that we have that the random number generator process does detour from what we believe is a strictly merit-based system and statute. So want to make sure in the future, if the legislature does authorize future licenses and any future licensing rounds, we do take a look at that issue and make sure that the intent of the legislature is looked at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional comment in the north?
There's no more public comment in the north.
Thank you. We'll go to public comment online. Doesn't sound like we have anybody online. Okay, then we'll just bring it back to the board for questions, discussions, concerns, and motion. Board members?
Member Durrett, for the record, everybody kind of took the wind out of my sails because I had the same sentiment. A thank you to staff and for their patience on this, and that I think I really appreciate what Mr. Kuroko said about everybody being in support of this. It's just the how that was the question, and I hope next time we do the how part quicker for the public's sake. But I do appreciate all the work that has gone into this, and I'm supportive of going forward.
Thank you. Additional comments?
Member Douglas, for the record, going into what's before us today, and I think we need to look at this in two parts. In terms of the first part, and then the criteria, the second part. It's clear the word shall grant licenses, but it's not clear that shall mandates everything that people are putting forth. The input by the counties has been authorized under the statute. So this board understands that, and it should be part of the process, the input. But the input is not necessarily the controlling factor. The law, as stated, still leaves the authority in this board to determine who gets the state license. There's issues as to local compliance and local needs, and we are sympathetic to that, that input by that county. What I am concerned with is making sure that we have a fair process, that it doesn't ultimately get hung up with litigation, as we've seen in many parts of the United States, as to how we have determined the licensees. And as I'm hearing this, and the public record has been made, I don't want other people, if we go forward with the version that's been totally put forward here today, that they say, well, we've been excluded. It's already been a done deal for the party that assisted the county in going forward with this. That it wasn't not really an open process. I don't want to see, if they are successful, them hung up and held up because of that type of challenge. My concern with what is here under the first part, the 5037, goes to subsection 7, where we indicate that they will answer the questions for the ranking, or the merit. And merit is interesting. We can't shy away from merit. We're required to have a merit review. I don't dispute that, and that's a whole separate issue I'd get into later. But what I think is that our merit review shouldn't be as to just our subjective review of first and second, and that person goes forward. I think we need to say, we're going to have a merit review. If parties in the 90 percentile or the 80 percentile, they go forward for review of their suitability. If there's multiple parties, then you'd go to a random number generator. If there's only one party, they'd be issued the license. That's my view of it, making it an open process, which differs slightly from what's been offered, where we'd have merit review and the top person would go forward, and only if there's a tie would it go to random number generator. That's the simplest way I can say it. But I'm concerned with the backside of it and some of the statements by the independent folks who looked at this as a subjective review that gets into the merit review. And that's a whole nother issue that I want to separate right now, because I'd like to see if we could come to some agreement on the first part of just awarding the license before we get into the merit criteria and how the points are arranged.
Thank you. Additional comments, concerns, questions?
Member Durrett, I think there's room to make changes before this was completed again, but I am in support of the current language. I think because there has been so many times that a particular licensee has testified in support, I could see there, if that licensee gets a license, there being discussion, people might point fingers and say, well, clearly that's what was meant to happen. But this process is so well deliberated and discussed and very intentionally avoids impropriety. So I think that this process would withstand any scrutiny as far as that would be concerned.
Thank you. Additional comments from board members? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion on A, which is NCCR 5.037, which is to issue, this allows us to issue cannabis establishment license for one medical cannabis cultivation facility and or medical cannabis production facility upon a request by a county.
Member Durrett, I move to approve agenda item 6A and adopt the language proposed for NCCR 5.037 amendments.
Do we have a second?
Member Mazzarana, second. Member Mazzarana seconds that.
Thank you. We have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Member Douglas, for the record. I'm sorry, my microphone. Member Douglas, for the record, I'm going to pose the motion. As I indicated as subsection 7, I think subsection 7 will potentially wind up getting this item back into litigation as it's stated, because of how we're setting it up for merit only. That potentially if we have more than one applicant, as it's presently written, our approving of the license as it's been so stated would be challenged and probably set aside. And as the concern is, how do we get the interested parties in it? And I realize this is critical for the rules, and I support getting the license and understand we must give that license. So that's not the issue. The issue is just how we do it for me.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion on the motion? Okay, and I'll just put in my comment, and I respect, of course, Justice Douglas, your comments and your concerns, and I also appreciate all the hard work that everybody's put into this. And there's always a risk, right? With rulemaking, there's always that risk that we're going to end up in litigation. But also there's also that opportunity to improve on a regulation or on a statute. And that's why we're always, back in the legislature. So although it'll become a little bit more tedious and time consuming to have to go to legislative commission for our regulations, it's still, it's still possible. It's not closed. So we can always amend, tweak, and I think that's part of the rule making process. So I am going to vote on this item for approval. And so those are my comments. Any additional comments?
Member Drett, just to echo that this just can't be perfect. We can't get every single person on board with this. And there will be litigation. We all know that. I think taking the path that is the most defensible in the courtroom, and I think this is the one that's most defensible, and we have a lengthy record of making sure that this would be an open and fair process while still complying with the commands of the legislature that we could not change. So I am supportive of it. And I just really cannot have White Pine back here asking again. I don't want to see White Pine back here. Thank you.
I hope there's not litigation. What do you know that I don't know? No, I know, of course, there's always that potential, but hopefully there won't be. Hopefully everything will go smooth. But with that, any additional comments or concerns or questions? Okay. If not, then I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor for the motion and with regard to item 6A on the regulation?
Madam Chair, if we
Yes.
can clarify, is this only as the 5037 and we'll take 5039 separate?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is only with regard to proposed regulation NCCR 5.037. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed. Member Douglas for the record.
Okay. Is there just one opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Now we'll go on to item 6B. And so this is the proposed NCCR 5.039. This is the criteria in weighing section of the regulation. Do we have any public comment? And if you already had public comment on the regulation overall, then that's fine. But if it's specific to this, if you really want to make your comments, then go ahead and come up and we'll take the South first. Any comments on the South with regard to this specific provision? Okay, any comments in the North?
No public comment in the North.
Any comment online?
To provide public comment, click the raise hand icon or dial *9. No online comment.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board then for any discussion, comments, questions before we take a motion. Any additional comments or concerns?
Member Douglas for the record. I've had discussions with our staff as to the merit categories. But as I look at the merit categories and the points awarded, I am concerned. Subsection 1 of 5039 talks about giving parties from 0 to 2 points if they have the minimum requirement of 200,000 established. It's been established by the board, 0 points. If they meet the minimum requirements, they get 1 point. And if they have more than the 200,000, they get 2 points. The amount of money doesn't guarantee success. And the only question should be, do they have the 200,000 as a minimum? That's my view, that we're not allowing it to be bought because you have more money. That was the A section. The B section, previous experience of a person who are proposed to be owners, officers, or board members. 0 points, no previous operating experience within the last 10 years. 1 point, if 2 or more persons with an ownership structure have the responsibility and direct experience managing companies, operations, or finances within the last 10 years, and 2 points. The question is, and within 10 years, what type of experience? And how are we going to look at that in terms of the entity or the individuals? Do we allow for consultants to come in and help them develop the structure for their company and so on? So it creates as many problems as answers. C is very difficult for me. It says the education and life experience of the persons who propose to be owners, officers, or board members of the proposed medical cannabis establishment. Select one of the first 3 below plus the bonus. No proposed owners have undergraduate or graduate degrees. and less than 5 years work experience. 1 point, two or more persons in the ownership structure have undergraduate degrees, including a bachelor or associate degree. And 2 points, two or more persons having undergraduate degrees, plus at least one person who postgraduate degree or 10 years work experience. I guess as I look at these degrees, does a degree in French or a degree in some of the abstract things that are out there these days make you a better person to be a manager? And do you select and pad your board membership for that? It doesn't go to operating a business. And more specifically, it doesn't go toward operating a cannabis establishment. It's helpful, but we have people that, based upon their work-life experience, should be given additional credit for that. D, demonstrates knowledge or experience on the part of persons who are proposed to be owners, officers, or board members of the proposed medical cannabis establishment with respect to the compassionate use of cannabis to treat medical condition. That's kind of a wild hair, depending on the type of license we're talking about. Production licenses produce product. I don't understand the relationship to that. It is more of a relationship to the medical or the direct sale, where it becomes important if they understand. And since the public seems to be more concerned these days as to how it affects, and we're at least willing to talk about doing the research, that becomes important. But it's still a problem. As I said, these various degrees. Do you have French? Do you have a theater background? What is your background? So, and then the other F, the adequacy of the size of the proposed medical cannabis establishment to serve the needs of persons who are authorized to engage in the medical use of cannabis. Again, does that fit what we're doing? And are they limited? Because this goes to a limited area in the county or the city or wherever they're doing. And again, the type of license and a diversity plan. And I remember there was some points being given if the party had a letter from the county or area they were into, opposed to someone who doesn't. I think we should have the information from those local entities of what they think their county needs, so that can be considered in the licensing process. They can set that down for this board to review and give consideration, but not just carte blanche, cut out people because they didn't get the vote of the local county or city to get a license. I think that would make it a little cleaner. But those are my concerns that I voice. I think they can be cleaned up in terms of points and how we give them.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments?
Member Durrett, I agree with some of the comments Member Douglas made, but I would like to see an opportunity to work on those for the next time this comes up. I would like to have the ability to work with the experts that drafted the report and give further inquiries as to more specific questions like Member Douglas has raised. So I'm still in support of going forward. I just would like the opportunity to engage with that firm and get more specific information back from them about best practices the next time we do this. But I am in support of going forward today.
Thank you. And those are definitely good points to be made. And again, I go back to, this is not, I don't think we will ever have a perfect regulation, but it's I think a heck of a lot better than when we first started, and that just takes people's input and everybody's expertise to help in and help make this as best as we can. So with that, any additional questions or concerns? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Member Dret, I move to approve the proposed adoption of the language enumerated under agenda item 6B.
Is there a second?
Member Mazarano seconds this.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
For the record, Member Douglas.
Okay, one opposed. Okay, motion carries. All right. Okay, so here we go. We'll see how that goes. And we'll go on now to agenda item. We're going to move agenda item 8 up before 7. And because we have to clear the room and we have a petition under the new statute and it's going to be confidential. Is that correct? Oh, the party's on the phone, I believe, right? Yes. So we'll take a short break, go get her, or no, she's on the phone? Okay, then we'll just go directly into that. And it's, so if we could clear the room so that we can have a closed session and then we will come back and have our last item on the agenda for a hearing. Okay, we're back on the record in open meeting with agenda item number 8. And agenda item number 8, this is pursuant to Senate Bill 277, Section 4.51. Janice Hine Padilla submitted a petition for an exemption from the prohibitions resulting from the conviction of an excluded felony offense. Under that section, the board, if the board determines that granting the exemption would not pose a threat to public health and safety or negatively impact the cannabis industry in the state, then we may grant the petition for the exemption. So with that, we have to take the vote in a public meeting. I'm prepared to take a motion on this.
Member Douglas, for the record, I'd make a motion that we grant the exemption, finding that there's nothing de minimis as to public's health and safety or the industry.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Member Dret, I second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion?
All right.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No opposed. Motion carries.
Good luck, Ms. Padilla.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now we are going on to item number 7. This is an adjudication of disciplinary action continued from May 23, 2023. This is phase 2. This is the disciplinary phase. Before we go into that, we'll go ahead and call up the parties, but I want to make sure that we have some ground rules established. First of all, we're going to have our arguments. The petitioner will have 10 minutes to argue. Then we'll go to the respondent for 15 minutes. And then the petitioner will have an additional 5 minutes. So that's a total of 15 minutes for each party. And then what we'll do is we'll just then bring it back to the board for deliberations on each of the items. Again, this is, you do have your time for arguments. This is not the time to rehash everything. I have to remind everybody that we've been through this on this item. I believe the hearing officer had from my recollection, 20 days of testimony from the parties, from witnesses, from expert witnesses. And so we've heard the merits of the case. This is not about the merits. This is simply to determine what the disciplinary action will be. Again, this is phase 2. Phase 1 was the merits of the case. And so here we are, and we'll go ahead and have the petitioner come up and do his 10-minute argument.
Madam Chair, before we go forward,
yes,
just for the record, Member Douglas, I would note that members Merritt, Douglas,
Young,
Freilich, no, not Young.
Okay.
Young is not part of this, as well as Member Durrett, have been part of this process and are familiar with the record as we go forward to the penalty phase.
correct. And I believe
I don't know at this point what our newest member, if they're involved in this or not, because of understanding the record. So that's just a clarification.
Thank you. And I believe that you've spoken with counsel.
Member Mazarana has spoken with counsel and will abstain from any voting on these issues.
And just to be clear, that's not me as counsel. That would be
Correct.
OML counsel. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, so there will only be 4 of us then participating on this item. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. You've already found 14 serious violations here. All I will discuss now is simply the categories to assign to each of the penalties, and we fully agree with the recommended penalty of revocation. Our argument is very straightforward. We're going to request you simply adopt the category of violations the disciplinary hearing officer recommended for the 14 violations that you found. In that regard, I have created a chart for everyone. Tony, if you wouldn't mind passing that out to the board members and opposing counsel. This chart simply goes by paragraph, lists the violation the hearing officer found, lists the disciplinary authority, and lists the recommended discipline by the hearing officer, which is the same as the recommended discipline that the board has in front of it from the hearing officer. Simply, you found 14 serious violations. There's revocation 3 different ways here. When you look at that, I'm going to briefly go through each of the violations you originally found. As you'll note on the chart, it goes by paragraph, but I've also put in numbers to show the order in which the hearing officer went and which the board went. Before we get to that, I do want to go over the categories. Regulation NAC 453D 905 goes through what each category means. Category 1 violations are, quote, violations of the severity that make a person ineligible to receive a license. The regulation goes on to list a specific list of examples, but they're not exclusive. The list generally includes actions which involve dishonesty toward the board. Category 2 violations are, quote, violations that create a present threat to public health or safety. This regulation lists 14 specific violations, which again are not exclusive. They include unintentional false statements, unintentional concealment of evidence, and other specific issues. Category 3 violations are violations that create a potential threat to public health or safety. Regulation again includes a non-exclusive list of 25 specific violations, including seed-to-sale tracking violations and allowing violations of the laws of the state. And that would include any laws of the state. If there's a violation of a regulation or other law that causes the potential for harm to the public health and safety, it's a Category 3 violation. Importantly, to show a Category 3 violation, we need only show the potential for harm to the public health and safety, not actual harm. After categorizing the violations, NAC 453D 905 subsection 4 then sets forth the appropriate penalties for each category of violation. Under this regulation, the list of fines are presumed to be appropriate, but they could be increased or decreased per the list of factors to consider in NAC 453D 905 subsection 2, which include the gravity of the violation and history of compliance. Per NAC 453D 905 1A, any violation can be assessed up to $35,000 and or can be considered for revocation. The NCCRs essentially mirror NAC 453D.905 when it comes to the categories and penalties for violations, except they're higher under NCCR 4. Here we're only looking at the lower penalties under NAC 453D.905. In this case, the hearing officer found only violations in categories 1, 2, and 3. There was nothing less serious than a Category 3. I'll now briefly review each violation, the category the hearing officer assigned, and our agreement to that category. First, we have under paragraph 83, that was a failure to follow a security plan. The hearing officer found a Category 3 violation, and this violation is specified under Category 3 under NAC 453D 905 2D6, which is a failure to follow a required security plan. This is presumed to be a Category 3 violation. The board should adopt that. Lack of a proper security plan and training clearly implicates a potential danger to public safety, including for the employees of the lab. The hearing officer found no mitigating factors here, and I'll note that she did check for mitigating factors in each of the violation and didn't find any. The second violation is under paragraph 35. Here, the respondent failed to follow seed-to-sale tracking requirements and requirements for disposal of cannabis waste. Clear Category 3 violations under subsections 4 and 15 of 905.3D. This failure leaves cannabis open to diversion. The facility is not properly tracking all cannabis through its facility, and no one can tell where it is simply by looking at metric. The third violation is under paragraph 87, again appropriate for a Category 3. This involves multiple failures to properly label certificates of analysis, violating seed-to-sale tracking requirements, and failing to keep required records. Fourth violation is under paragraph 94, which involves hiding key lab information in Post-it notes and then discarding them. The hearing officer found a Category 3 violation for failure to keep required records. Honestly, that really should have been a Category 1 violation for intentional concealment of evidence of the illegal testing. However, we accept the hearing officer's recommendation of a Cat 3. Under paragraph 88, this involves concealment of test results from the department. Respondent reported test results first to clients and did not report them to the department at the same time. It also involved collusion with clients on which test results to report when there were multiple illegal retests. This was appropriately found to be a Category 1 violation, clear evidence of dishonesty with a regulatory body, and is by itself a revocable offense. 91 is also a Category 3. We agree with that finding. This involved inadequate training of staff. Paragraph 92 involved lack of competency of the lab staff. Again, a Category 3 violation. Leads to inaccurate results, which leads to potential danger to the public health and safety. Paragraph 93 involved respondents' failure to analyze THC potency to ensure accurate reporting. Again, inaccurate reporting of THC levels can lead to patients incorrectly dosing themselves and is a potential danger to the public health. Paragraph 101 involved respondent using contaminated chemistry samples to test for microbials. Again, a category 3 leads to inaccurate testing results, which creates potential danger to the public. Similarly, with paragraph 97, we agree with the category 3. Again, involved repeated retesting for pesticides and mycotoxins. Paragraphs 98 and 102 were lumped together with one category 3 violation, and we agree with that. That involved respondents' illegal retesting of microbials and the false reporting of Aspergillus test results as passing when initial results had failed. With note to paragraphs 98 and 102, the hearing officer did note this in the body of her findings that it was a intentional act under 453D 905 3A3, which really should be a category 1 violation, but we will accept the category 2 as the hearing officer recommended. 12th violation is under paragraph 99, which involved 22 instances of illegal retesting of heavy metals. Again, hearing officer noted it was intentional, but looked for a category 2, which we will agree with. Again, paragraph 100 is the 13th violation, involved multiple instances of illegal retesting of samples for cannabinoid potency. Again, that was shown to be intentional, should be a category 1. We're fine with a category 2 on that one. 14th and final violations under paragraph 96 involved respondents' failure to maintain quality control and quality assurance programs in the lab. The hearing officer found a category 3. Again, improper QA, QC leads to inaccurate results. Inaccurate results lead to potential danger to public health and safety. If you accept the hearing officer's recommendations on each of the 14 violations you found, then there is 1 category 1 violation, 3 category 2 violations, and 10 category 3 violations. The first category 1 violation results in a civil penalty up to $35,000 or revocation. Thus, you could revoke for that alone. The first category 2 violation requires a civil penalty of up to $10,000 and the second up to $20,000. The third category 3 violation requires revocation. They have the requisite number of category 2s for revocation. Category 3 violations require revocation. After the 5th one, the hearing officer found 10, double the amount needed for revocation. Thus, you have 3 paths here to revocation, and we urge you to accept the hearing officer's final finding of revocation and $82,500 in civil penalties. I believe I've used my allotted 10 minutes. And if you have any questions, I can take them now or when I come back up again.
Member Douglas, for the record, looking at what you provided, your exhibit, I note that as the 91 and 92, the NACs, there's a typo. It says 950 and instead of 905 on both of those that you handed out.
Oh, I see it. Yes.
And we had that in another document, but I would just note for the record that there was a 47-page preliminary order of the Cannabis Compliance Board regarding findings of the statutory or regulatory violations. It was found by us and it was signed off on back in July. That goes into the specific charges and what state laws they in fact violated just in terms of those, and whether opposite counsel feels that they have not been properly noticed as the violation, they can make that argument within their issue as to what should be done as the violations. But I just note that we have that. It was signed off by the board. The board understood what the technical arguments were and what the violations were.
Right, correct. And I simply request you adopt what the hearing officer recommended for each of those 14. Pretty simple argument.
Member Durrett, for the record. So these fine amounts were the fine amounts that were in place prior to 2019, right? So they've gone up since then and they've gone back down since then. And these are the ones that were in place in 2019. So they're comparable to what's in place now.
They are. Yeah, I mean, if you look at this, I mean, if you compare it to, again, SB 195 doesn't apply here. It's not retroactive. But the only real difference here would be the 35,000 for category one would get knocked down to 20,000.
Okay.
Other than that, they're all lower.
Okay, I have a question but I think I'll wait till later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Kimberly Maxim Rushton with the law firm Cooper Levinson. Before I begin my presentation, Chair, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you and the members of the board, and my colleague, Mr. Raff, for the kindness and professionalism you've shown me and my family the last few months. I certainly appreciate that. Now, if I may proceed with my argument.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, for the record, I'm Kimberly Maxim Rushton with the law firm Cooper Levinson, appearing on behalf of Lettuce Test LLC, otherwise referred to as LTL. Joining me today are the owners of LTL, Mr. Rob Richardson and Mr. Rick Rushton, as well as the general manager and chief of compliance, Ms. Kelly Anderson. We also have by Zoom, although I think he had some trouble connecting, Chair, the scientific lab director, Dr. David Luttrell. As the board is aware, since the initiation of this case in 2019, the CCB has operated under multiple statutes and regulations. Now, following the 2023 legislature, the CCB is no longer exempt from Nevada's Administrative Procedures Act under 233B, and the statutory standards to disciplinary actions have changed, fortunately for the betterment of Nevada's cannabis industry. The NCCRs adopted by the CCB in 2020 amid COVID provided little opportunity for input from the industry, and not because of a lack of effort. While the industry suggestions and requests for clarification were considered, few were adopted. Thereafter, the cannabis industry witnessed the development of a state agency far different than the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Taxation, and not just in the structure of the agency, but in its attitude towards and treatment of licensees. Despite multiple public comments complaining about the ambiguities in the law, the need for change in the regulation, and the agency's oversight of licensees, which was unnecessarily harsh versus instructive, nothing changed. It took a new governor in the 2023 legislature to say enough. Through the leadership of Governor Lombardo and the 2023 legislature, the CCB's disciplinary process has materially changed to recognize the value and importance of compliance. As a former regulator, counsel to the Nevada Gaming Control Board and Gaming Commission, and the chief of the Nevada Attorney General's office, I submit that in all regulated industries in Nevada, there is a high threshold for entry into the market for licensure. However, once that licensure has occurred, the regulator's job is to work with the licensees to help them maintain compliance. And when there is a lapse, it's not to go after them with a harsh penalty or revocation, but to help them develop a corrective action plan so that they can then be compliant. This is why administrative agencies rely so heavily on regulations, which are intended to reflect working relationship between the industry and the regulator so that there's no ambiguities in the law, no misinterpretations, and no need for clarification. This is also the reason why so few administrative agencies are exempt from 233B, the Administrative Procedures Act. Under that Procedures Act, suspension is only allowed when there is a known threat to the public, coupled with objective standards that must be met by the agency before the suspension can occur. Additionally, 233B curtails the ability to revoke a license to only those licensees who have demonstrated an inability to be compliant. As a result of the 2023 legislative changes, the CCB must now consider other factors in their disciplinary proceedings, specifically whether the licensee developed a timely corrective action plan, whether the licensee when made aware of the violation, took action to correct it. 3, a licensee's good faith effort to prevent the violation from reoccurring through either training or other actions that demonstrate compliance. And 4, whether the licensee, before the commencement of an investigation, established an SOP, standard operating procedure, which directly addressed the conduct constituting the violation. In addition, The act of stacking violations to elevate the fine amount is prohibited now under the law. Specifically, if a licensee is alleged to have committed multiple violations consisting of the same act, omission, or course of conduct, those violations are to be charged as a single violation if the violations are closely related in time, place, and circumstances, and were discovered pursuant to a single audit, investigation, or inspection. Based on the 2023 changes to Nevada's cannabis law, I would submit for the board's consideration the following facts. Immediately following the summary suspension in December of 2019, LTL requested a list of all deficiencies identified during the staff's audit. And upon receipt of the audit findings, LTL voluntarily prepared and submitted a proposed corrective action plan addressing each alleged violation. That proposed corrective action plan was accepted and approved by the then executive director on January 16, 2020, at which time most of the items that were identified as deficiencies had already been completed. In fact, all but one or two of the corrective actions were done by January 20, 2020, 1 year before this complaint was even filed. Additionally, my clients will respectfully remind the board that this case originated over 4 years ago. To date, there have been no reported medical or health issues from consumers using cannabis tested by LTL, despite 4 unlawfully issued health notices stating otherwise. And there are still holds on cultivators' plants from that 2019 audit/investigation. Financially, there is no question that the CCB has obtained its pound of flesh from my client. To put it into perspective, I will note the following expenses that they have incurred. $12,000 to quickly develop and adhere to the compliance plan in 2020. Then you had the cost of the hearing, which lasted approximately 6 weeks, and the LTL incurred in excess of $200,000 in legal fees. Additionally, the lab incurred $4,300 in copying fees as the 1,200 plus pages of discovery were emailed to me. But most important is the fact that LTL was required to pay $17,000 for the transcripts before the hearing officer would conclude the hearing and render a decision. Again, as a former regulator, former chief of the Nevada Attorney General's office, I know of no state agency that requires a respondent to pay for the transcripts before a petition for judicial review is filed. It's not in your laws, it's not in any laws. But this ALJ, like the many other procedural infirmities that happened during this case and the due process violations that occurred, this one makes it right for a reviewing court to set this case aside, mandating that my clients pay $17,000 in order to have a decision in their case. But these are the easily quantifiable expenses. The hard ones to put a price on are those incurred by the cultivators who have product pulled off the shelf and put on hold indefinitely, some of which, as I indicated, is still on hold. It's also hard to quantify the loss of business from the untruthful and intentionally misleading health notices, which specifically identified LTL when other similar notices issued by the CCB never mentioned the licensee, just the strain. Best estimate, since 2020, my client has lost more than $3 million as a result of this case. But in that time, they've kept the doors open. They paid their annual renew fees. They paid the illegal audit fees that were used to be imposed. They paid their insurance. They paid the security, and they have kept their employees on. So here we are in 2024, still arguing whether or not it makes the CCB the gold standard of licensing to fine a licensee for the use of Post-its. This time I'll go through the violations, most of which I will tell you under the new law, which I respectfully disagree. It does not make it retroactive application to apply the new law. You as regulators have an obligation to follow the current law. When that regulation or that statute changes and it's not a substantive change, procedural or remedy, you are obligated to follow it. So I just respectfully disagree with my colleague. I have ample case law that I can demonstrate to this body that these are the standards that you must now follow. No stacking, limited with respect to the fine, and the obligation to consolidate these actions, these violations, because they all occurred during a single audit in 2019. So again, the 16 hours of training, LTL acknowledged they had not completed it. As mitigation to this body, I would note the fact that that statute or regulatory scheme contains 15 plus security requirements, all of which have been met. What had not been done was the 16 hours of training. Does this constitute a violation of the approved security plan? There was no security plan. It was an SOP that specifically detailed what their security plan and training entailed. It was approved and audited against prior to 2019 with no obligation to do the training. So again, I note the fact that when they were made aware of it, it was done within a 10-day period. For that reason, I would respectfully request that this be identified as a Category 5, subsection 6 violation, and a warning be issued to my client. The next one is the failure to close out samples in metric. As you know, the client acknowledged that they had not completed that. However, as mitigation, I note that all other destruction requirements were maintained. Therefore, there was no question that all samples have been properly accounted for and destroyed. Based on this, I would respectfully request that you consider this to be a Category 5 violation and a warning given to the licensee. Number 87 is the failure to maintain a red banner around the words R&D on a certificate of analysis. This specifically occurred on 8 certificates of analysis when over 150 COAs have been issued in that time period. I would also note the fact that while this is a requirement under the reg, it does not tie directly to one of the disciplinary actions. What's interesting about this is that the charge is not for failing to put the red banner around the R&D. It's for a violation of the disciplinary regulations, which I would respectfully submit. Those are akin to sentencing guidelines, and those aren't violations. And so again, these are the infirmities that we had to address during the hearing, which really make this confusing, convoluted, and demonstrate why it was a necessity to go to the hearing on this matter. For this one, for the COAs, based on the fact that it occurred in 2019, there have been no further issues. LTL recommends a Category 5, subsection 6 violation with a warning. The next one is disseminating partial test results to a cultivator before putting the complete test results into metric. Basically, labs are precluded from telling a customer the results of any test before telling the state. I would remind the board that in your materials is evidence of the fact that this was a common practice in 2019. There is an advertisement in evidence from BD Labs confirming that this was a common practice. And the reason why is because potency tests take less than an hour. Microbial tests take 3 days. There was nothing nefarious or nothing that demonstrated an act that was beyond the scope of what is expected of labs by providing this information. Instead, the reason it's done is just good business relations. When cultivators know the potency, they're able to go ahead and initiate the labeling process and to make decisions relative to future strains. But they can't sell the product again until the completed COA goes into metrics. And at that point, then they're allowed to market their wares. But again, providing the information early did not benefit anybody. It was just simply good customer relations, and it was a common practice at the time. Based on the fact that the company immediately addressed this when this was brought to their attention pursuant to the 2019 audit, I would respectfully recommend that this be treated as a Category 5 violation and a warning given. Counts number 91 and 92 specifically pertain to the improper training. As the board is aware, pursuant to the 2019 audit, it was determined that the lab director had not properly trained a new technician before allowing him to be on the floor. Similarly, the same act/omissions occurred in other counts, specifically the scientific lab director's failures. This serves as the basis for 2 counts here, as well as counts number 93 and 96, which relate to training, ensuring quality assurance and quality control standards, and the technician's failure to identify Delta 8 on the instrumentation. The complaint charged LTL with violating the requirements that a lab hire a scientific lab director to A, ensure that it achieves and maintains quality standards of practice, and B, supervises staff. That's what they were charged. That act under the complaint is a violation of that. But what they did is then the complaint takes that act, the failure of the lab director to meet their regulatory requirements, and says that it's a Category 3 violation for allowing disorderly conduct to occur in the lab and allowing activity that violates the law. How does the scientific lab director's actions constitute disorderly conduct in the lab? Consistent with the new law, I recommend that these counts be consolidated into one and be deemed a Category 5 violation, a warning given. This is based on the fact that since mid-2020, Dr. David Luttrell has been the scientific lab director for LTL. His accolades and credentials are listed in the board's materials, and they certainly speak for themselves. Pursuant to the 2020 Corrective Action Plan, LTL demonstrated that it was properly testing for Delta 8. Prior to and at the time of the 2019 audit, LTL had developed and maintained an SOP pertaining to potency, which specifically listed the Delta 8. For those reasons, I would submit that these mitigating factors, again, warrant Category 5 violation and a mere warning. Count number 94, the use of Post-it notes by staff to communicate work requests. The complaint cites this as a violation of a reg that contains a list of periodicals and treatises. Neither the complaint nor the ALJ's findings specify which periodical LTL violated or failed to follow, nor is there any reference to a section of any of the periodicals which states that using Post-it notes is a bad lab practice. As the law now states, a complaint must not consist merely of charges raised in the language of a statute or reg, but instead it must specify the law the licensee has violated. As LTL has argued in their respective pleadings, there is no way any cannabis licensee would know which periodical it was expected to adhere to or which section of those periodicals. Instead, good lab practices are formulated in SOPs validated by objective agencies such as ISO and IANAB, and at no time did either one of those agencies find a deficiency in LTL's maintenance of key scientific lab information or the use of Post-it notes to transmit or maintain key information. For this reason, I would recommend that a Category 5 violation be found and a warning be issued. Category number 6, or count number 96, is the failure of the scientific lab director to ensure LTL was properly obtaining quality assurance and quality control standards. I'd ask the board to consider this count and those related to the other lab director's failures to be one violation as they're closely related in time. And I shouldn't take more than 2 to 3 more minutes, Chair, if I could keep going. Thank you. Based on the mitigating.
She is 2 minutes over her time, a little over 2 minutes over the time.
Okay, and then I'll give you 2 minutes.
I appreciate the accommodation. Thank you. Based on the mitigating factors, the fact that one, this occurred, these were identified all pursuant to the 2019 audit, all pertain to the same act of the lab director's failures. We ask that be consolidated into one and is noted a Category 5 violation. Count number 97 is the only statutory violation that the complaint contains. This pertains specifically to medical cannabis and the general testing standards. And while it pertains to that, what the act is that the testing for microbials and pesticides was not being done properly. And so again, it lines up squarely with the complaint about the microbials, with the complaint about the heavy metals. Staff didn't like them rerunning the test, and for those reasons, they told them to stop. They stopped, and then a year later, they're cited in the complaint. I would note the fact that it was interesting how this was only identified as a complaint under NRS 453A, which is the medical, and not under 453D. So apparently, staff did not believe that there were any issues with the instrumentation and the testing of pesticide and microtoxins as it applied to recreational cannabis. In mitigation, LTL submits that prior to the audit, the lab was required to undergo ISO inspections to obtain and maintain certification. A lab will not receive ISO certification if its instrumentation is not working properly or if its testing practices cannot ensure accurate results. Again, we submit this as a Category 5 violation and request that it warrants nothing more than a warning. Counts number 98 and 102 were combined. These pertain specifically to the microbial testing. During the audit, while on site, an auditor asked to see LTL's microbial logs. Without hesitation, those were provided, and it was acknowledged that LTL was running multiple tests on the sample to ensure accurate results. When the scientific lab director asked the agent that was a concern, the agent's response was, "You're doing it too much." At that time, the lab director stopped doing it. Since December 19th of 2020, or excuse me, December 19th of 2019, LTL has not rerun a single sample before the results have been completed and put into metrics. So this act stopped the day of the audit because the auditor said it wasn't right. I think it's important that that be noted because of the fact that, again, 12 days after ceasing this practice, they were served with a suspension. Then a year later, they were served with a complaint and forced to go through a hearing. No settlement offers were extended after January 2020 or before February 2023. Please let me be clear. Rerunning a sample as outlined, this was not rerunning a sample as outlined in the law. LDL did not run out to the cultivator shop, grab a new sample, and then bring it back and rerun it. Instead, it used parts of the same originally collected sample maintained by the lab to run tests in order to determine whether the sample contained detectable microbials. This is a scientific practice not done to hide information from the state, but rather to protect the end user. These are small samples taken from big lots. The testimony confirmed that based on the handling alone of a sample, it could fail the microbial test on the first run. Make no mistakes, labs use very sophisticated, sensitive instrumentation that can produce varying results, and it takes a trained scientist to perform these tests, analyze the data, and render a conclusive result. That said, even though my client and I disagree with staff's interpretation of the law, LTL clearly demonstrated compliance when it stopped doing it prior to even being suspended. For this reason, we stand by the accuracy of the results produced by LTL during the period and note the fact that based on the nature of the complaint and the acts and everything, I would submit that the closest applicable disciplinary regulation is a category 4 and a fine not to exceed $1,250. The rerunning of the heavy metal samples is the same act as done with respect to the rerunning of the microbials. Under the new law, those must be considered one violation. They're close in time, same course of action. Again, we state that the closest finding was a category 4 violation and a fine not to exceed $1,250. With respect to the potency inflation,
I'm sorry, this is
LTL
the court reporter. I'm gonna need to take a break soon. We'll be going 3 hours, so hopefully we can take one shortly. And can you sit down?
Thank you.
And I think we're significantly over.
Yes, I know, at least 5 minutes.
Certainly.
Yes. Yes. If we can just wrap it up and then, okay,
Certainly.
thank you.
So again, just going through the respective counts, what you see is a pattern. You see the 1 or 2 offs, the red banner around the words R&D, the 16 hours of training. Otherwise, it focuses on 2 things. The scientific lab director's failure to ensure accuracy in the lab and failure to train. The rerunning of the samples, microbials, heavy metals, the microtoxins. Those are the same acts identified during the same audit, close in time, and for those reasons, we respectfully submit that they should be considered a single violation and warrant, based on the mitigating factors we've presented, the amount of money that's been spent and the time of this case, that you issue a warning and that both parties proceed with their business and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and take a break and then we'll come back.
Before she
to
sits
rebuttal.
down, just a couple of quick questions. Number one, again, you indicated the Administrative Procedure Act. We got into this before. At the time, this agency was exempt from that. I know that you disagreed with that position. It should have come under. They've made it clear that we are now. Problematically, as of this particular matter, though, it's a carryover from that period. I know the governor's office has made things clear that those things that were started prior, we would proceed under those rules and not necessarily new rules, because that impacts one of the matters that was on earlier today, because it started before the change and it did not have to go through that. So I just note that for the record, if you want to comment on it. Yes, I think we might be able to take some of the things you said into consideration. I'm just concerned that we are at points operating under the old rules to a certain point. And yes, we can take in as extenuating circumstances, the points you're raising.
And again, if you'd like me to address that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to do so.
We can do that on well, let's see. Do you have any comment right now?
I just note that there is both Nevada Supreme Court rulings as well as U.S. Supreme Court rulings that basically say statutes that do not change substantive rights and instead relate solely to remedies and procedures apply to any case pending when enacted. This case is pending. Again, I'm happy to brief this for you, but this is not retroactive application of the law. It's prospective. And when the matter has not been completed, and this one has not, and those remedies and
Counsel,
procedures.
you're re-arguing something you argued before. It's in the record.
Well, no, sir, because the
There-
law had not changed at that time, and now it has.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I have questions for her before should I wait on them?
Well, I'm just worried about the court
I can wait.
reporter.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. So let's just come back. Yeah. All right. 15 minutes. We'll come back. Thank you. Okay, we're going to come back on the record. So this again is the adjudication of disciplinary action. This is agenda item 7 on our agenda, the continuation from our May 2023 hearing. This is Cannabis Compliance Board versus Canix Nevada LLC, now known as Lettuce Test LLC. When we left off, then we had the respondent finish with her statement, and now we have the petitioner. If you can go ahead and come deliver your closing arguments, and then you have an additional 5 minutes, so a total of 10. Okay, and then we can open it up to any question.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the arguments were made before, so I don't think I have to go into too many detail on them, but a few things I do want to touch on. First of all, council argued basically for 1 or 2 Cat 5 violations, and I think 1 Category 4 violation. It's clear from that argument that this respondent does not understand the seriousness of the 14 violations that this board found. It doesn't show respect for the regulator's finding in the preliminary order, and is really just looking for a de minimis slap on the wrist. That is not this case. Turning to the discussion of SB 195, it does not apply here. There's no indication it's retroactive. It's not merely procedural. You know, it goes to how the board considers penalties and what penalties to impose and how. Even if it did apply here, the penalty of revocation is still applicable to Category 1, still applicable to the number of Category 2 violations and the number of Category 3 violations. There is no stacking here. The violations were all separate and distinct and for different areas. The complaint asked, for instance, there were over 200 illegal retests. You ultimately found 1 violation for that, and we accept that. That's 1 violation. There's no stacking. So there's no stacking issue here, even if SB 195 did apply and revocation would still be appropriate. We also have a repeated argument continuously that merely correcting an omission or an illegal act is enough to absolve yourself of discipline. Not clear if that's made under 233B or whether it isn't, and I don't think it matters. Again, 233B doesn't apply, and I fully agree with Justice Douglas on that. But another important issue, you know, I've been in front of many boards before, many professional boards like the medical board, the dental board, all kinds of boards. For instance, if you have a surgeon who's performing improper surgeries or unnecessary surgeries, if that surgeon stops, they're still going to be disciplined for what they did wrong. If a dentist continually does unnecessary root canals, the dental board is still going to discipline them, even if they correct it. Just because you stop doing an illegal act and correct what you did is not enough to avoid discipline. Otherwise, we would see things over and over and over again. You'd correct your act, say you're fine, move on, do it again, correct it again. It just doesn't make any sense. As to the costs they were complaining about, you know, if you want to take something to hearing, it's going to cost you an attorney's fees and other fees. We have no control over the court reporter. The court reporter owns the transcripts. I'm not sure under the court reporter rules and regulations, we can just give them away anyway. You have to go to the court reporter and buy the transcripts you want. It's a cost of contesting the case. There needs to be deference here to what the hearing officer found. The hearing officer sat through 20 days of this hearing, observed each and every witness, went through 8,000 pages or more of exhibits, listened to 3,000 pages of testimony, and ought to be granted a great deal of deference. We didn't agree with everything that she had recommended for a penalty. We thought some of the category 2s should be category 1s, but we accept what that hearing officer found. And the board should also grant her similar deference. There is a easy motion here to make, and that is to simply accept the hearing officer's recommendations as set forth in the chart that I provided you, plus the typos that Justice Douglas found, and we can conclude the case that way. Other than that, I think everything else has been covered in prior arguments. If you have any questions for me, I am willing to answer.
Any questions for the board members?
Member Drutt, for the record, our decision making is de novo, right? There doesn't, you said there we need to have deference for the ALJ, but is there any particular standard that's related to, or any presumptions or anything that respondent would need to overcome to convince us not to accept the ALJ's decision? What's the standard?
Well, this is the first time we've done an adjudication under these rules. So the reason I'm asking you to give the hearing officer deference is because she's looked at everything very thoroughly and seen the witnesses firsthand. And she's got an 80-page order with 300 footnotes. So you know the case has been thoroughly reviewed. And I think for that reason, you would give her at least some deference in the conclusions that she made.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate her work and respect her very much. I'm just making sure there's not some legal standard I was unaware
No,
of.
I don't believe there is.
Okay. I do have another question. At the very least, we would have a decision. We could choose in sentencing whether or not we would want to impose the spirit of SB 195 or not, right? Even, I mean, I think, and I still haven't seen case law that convinces me otherwise, that we should follow SB 195. But even if we weren't required to, we could in sentencing, right? Because it's discretionary.
You can set the penalties you want. And as I indicated before, I don't think SB 195 applies. But even if it did, you still have enough category 1s, category 2s, category 3s to revoke here. And the only thing that really would change is you'd knock down that 35,000 to 25,000 or to 20,000. So that's really the only difference.
And I wanted to ask counsel this. So I'll ask her when she comes back up. But maybe you would also want to address, there's two different issues. There's the issue that they said 233B applies, and then that argument was just the board did not agree with that argument that 233 applied.
Right.
But now that if that argument comes back up, it's because the law has changed since then, right? So it's not rehashing that same argument that we already had and decided. It's, does 233 apply to this? I know it doesn't, because specifically in 233 in SB 328, it said except for any ongoing cases.
Right.
But could we choose to say, well, the legislative intent is to treat this a certain way, and we want to comply with that intent?
I don't think so. I think 233 doesn't apply, and that's it. Again, even if it did apply, nothing changes here.
I think what would change here potentially is the spirit of, we're not as interested in discipline and fine as we are getting licensees back on track, because 233B would have required, if it applied, 233B would have required a whole different process, and one much more geared towards getting the licensee back on track and not as focused on fines.
I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. Nowhere in 233B or anywhere else does it say if you correct something, goodbye, no discipline. And again, I've been in front of plenty of boards that are subject to 233B. And again, I will tell you, if you're a dentist doing unnecessary root canals, they're going to punish you even if you stop or change your ways.
Okay.
I've been in front of plenty of professional boards under 233B, and mere correction or stopping a bad act is not going to get you away from discipline. It's unfair to the other licensees, honestly, to do it that way. So I don't see that as the purpose or point of 233B.
Yeah, I agree that just because you change just because you correct it doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily foreclose discipline. I think it's a question of what's our focus here. Is our focus punishment and rehabilitation, punishment, or is our focus compliance?
It's both. And for this licensee, they were summarily suspended in 2017 and 2019. Repeat violations were found in 2022. They're asking you for 1 Cat 4 and 1 Cat 5 when you found 14 serious violations. I think they're past the rehabilitation stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Any other questions from the board members?
Hearing none, I'll sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions from respondent? No? Okay. For the respondent, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we get everything answered before we actually go into deliberation so that we don't then go back and forth.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Member Durrett, for the record, what did you, I don't think you've addressed, is the stacking, they do seem like very different issues. So it doesn't seem to me like stacking because it's, I think the stacking issue that was addressed under SB 195 is to avoid something like there's 100 plants with the same issue and it's being charged 100 times. I think these are unrelated in some ways. Some of them are very similar, but are not at the same instance. Like all the retesting could probably be considered one, and then failure to train could all be considered one issue. But what do you think about that?
And for the record, I'm Kimberly Maxon Rushton on behalf of LTL. I agree with you, Member Durrett, with respect to what SB 195 is attempting to accomplish in terms of asking the board to consider those acts like you enumerated earlier, where there's failure to click the button for the closeout of metric. There were multiple instances of that. And as this body found, yes, they didn't do it on multiple occasions, but it was really the same act. That's really what the intent of SB 195. When I argued this previously and how it applies here is, as you see on council's recommended discipline, it has a first category 3, a second category 3, a third category 3. That's illegal. You cannot have a second offense until you have an adjudication on the first one. So you can't have people committing acts that were found during an audit and say that they have repeatedly done that because they were just discovered. So it doesn't matter if you have 50 of the same acts. It doesn't count as violation 1 through 50. It's all violation 1 because it's a first offense. So you can stack those and everything, but you can't call it a second offense, third offense, and fourth offense until you've had an adjudication. And there's been no adjudication. It's just like the misnomer about the 2017. There was never an adjudication. You got a suspension notice, went in and paid $1,000. Jorge Pupo lifted it, and that was it. There was never a complaint filed. There was no adjudication. That was it. If you want to consider that to be a first offense, I don't know how you do it because there was no final adjudication. There was never a complaint. So in this, my suggestion is that if you are inclined to look at these individually, then you can't say that it's a first category 3, second category 3, third category 3, and elevate the fine. It's all a first because there's not been an adjudication of this yet. So that is what we argued in the pleadings before. I believe that is somewhat consistent with what the intent of SB 195 is. And the objective here isn't to just sidestep the responsibility. The objective here is to point out that we recognized it, accepted it, and addressed it even before the complaint was filed. What more were we supposed to do? A fine would have been appropriate at that time over the course of the 1 year, but instead we had to wait until 2021. I mean, all of these things demonstrate the fact that there was never a recognition of the fact that LTL, while respectfully disagreeing, still said, fine, we'll act as you tell us to, and we will become compliant. That is what your objective should be. I'm not saying that you should let every licensee who comes before you that says, I promise I won't do it again, to get off. But when we actively asked for the findings, when we actively submitted a voluntary comprehensive plan that was signed by the executive director, and then the suspension was lifted and all indiscretions cleared, why give us a complaint a year later for the exact same thing? That's what I'm trying to impress upon you, is that that exercise alone, all of the obligations and work and costs that went into it, that was the pound of flesh that the state got out of my client. There's nothing else to. They've kept the doors open, like I said, kept their employees, done all of the things that they're supposed to. But it's just been, as you know, and based on my comments and with respect to the regs, these labs don't get paid. I mean, they all are operating in the red right now. They just don't get paid. So any penalty that you assess with them, I can tell you right now, is going to be a significant financial hardship for this company. These costs alone in the lost business is just, thank you. Happy.
I have another question. Okay.
I would like a chance to respond to new items that was brought up. Kind of had Sarah there to answer the question, so.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I
and-
can't hear whoever's speaking.
It's Christopher Rath.
Okay. And I mean, I'm being very lenient, and which is fine because I think this is serious. It's, you know, your license on the line. So I want to make sure that we get everything out possible. We don't have anything else on any other items other than just the administrative on the agenda. So I want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak, and any questions from the board members to make sure that we're not confused and that we know what we're doing before we take a vote. So with that, yes, definitely. Can I just get clarification? The lab is a functioning, working lab, but is it doing testing on cannabis at the time right now, or it's not doing cannabis
Its
testing?
pesticide machine is not working, and in lieu of farming that specific test out and completing the others, the company just feels that that's not in the best interest of the cultivators. So for those reasons, they just don't accept cannabis tests right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification. Okay.
And it's really just one point.
Sure. Thank you.
I'll be very brief. The only point I want to raise was this new issue on stacking that came up where you have to adjudicate each item separately before you can have progressive discipline. The regulation NAC 453D.905 is very clear on progressive discipline. And that can be found under subsection 4. I'll take, for example, subsection 4. Let's look at D. For a category 3 violation, which is the first violation in the immediately preceding 2 years, a civil penalty of not more than $2,500. Second violation in the immediately preceding 2 years, civil penalty of $5,000. Third violation in the immediately preceding 2 years, not more than $10,000. That's not stacking. If the violations are committed within 2 years of the other one, progressive discipline kicks in. Otherwise, I would have to have filed a separate complaint for each different violation, had that adjudicated, and come back before you. That's inefficient. It wastes everybody's resources. If there are multiple different violations, they should be charged in one complaint, and the progressive discipline should be followed as per the regulation. That was my only rebuttal.
Thank you. And I know Member Durrett has additional questions.
Member Durrett, for the record, has it been inspected annually since?
For the record, Kimberly Maxon Rushton on behalf of LTL, yes, they are subject to the same audits as every other licensee. And in fact, it's my understanding that they were recently audited.
Okay.
Within the last 2 months.
Are they planning on going back to cannabis?
Certainly.
Okay.
So as I indicated just briefly, I mean, the pesticide machine is very sensitive. There were issues, if they're noted in the complaint, with respect to the tolerance levels. And as a result of that, brought out an expert to modify the tolerance levels. And it's been an ongoing process for quite a while. But there's no point in going back into business if you're only doing partial testing. And then the other concern is that if you're having issues with these tolerance levels and the states had told you before that they had concerns, there's no point in trying doing it again. Because the state's probably going to have, so the objective is to ensure you do not have these issues going forward. So yes, they have Remember, Direct, they have not operated for a period of time as a result of that, but with the, again, the intent of ensuring that they meet the staff's specifications with respect to the tolerance levels.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Any additional questions? Of either party at this point before we bring it back to the board? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go ahead and bring it to the board for discussion and deliberation. Does anybody have any questions about everything that we've heard so far? And unless somebody is opposed to it, I'm inclined to go down the list of basically what the order how the order listed it, and I believe that's pretty much what we have here in front of us is the list of the paragraphs, the violations, and what the hearing officer found. So I'm open to any suggestions that you might have.
Madam Chairman, Member Douglas, for the record, as to what we have before us, there's a lot to take into consideration in terms of what we heard over the past few years and the various times when council has spoken to us and the papers they've given to us, reading the administrative law judges' hearings and the findings and so on, a lot of time, a lot of interest. To be very candid and upfront, I'm not into a revocation of a license at this point. Our industry, the cannabis industry, marijuana industry, whatever you want to call it, and those who are involved have gone through a rocky road. It's been a learning experience. We have some individuals who are still fighting process about a industry that has requirements that have to be strictly construed and adhered to. And I heard the phrase used, good business relationships. Quite candidly, I'm not interested in good business relationships. I'm interested in something that potentially affects individuals being done properly. So the testing and the training, especially in this area of these businesses that have to do this, heavy metals, toxins, so on, and meeting it. I'm inclined not want us to revoke. I would look at the revocations and change them into suspensions. I'm looking at basically 180 days worth of suspension with 30 apiece going down. I accept the hearing officer's recommendation as to the penalties that have been set forth in this. And that was as to violation 83, 2,500, violation 85, 5,000, violation 87, 10,000. On violation 88, they've listed it, she's recommended 35. I would bring it down to 20. I would hold with going down to the 98, the 102, to the single violation for 10,000. 99 would stay at 20,000. That's kind of where I'm at. So I'd like to hear other members and their feelings about this. We go with this, but just off the top, just looking at it in fairness. And also the fact that even though I understand council's position and the fact that you've been good now when it was decided you weren't good before, we still take that into consideration. That's within our bailiwick. And so that's part of not wanting to revoke. And again, despite some other feelings, we are an industry in this state that is still kind of learning to walk. And some of our participants are having problems adjusting that this is just not an everyday business. This is a restricted license and a privileged license, and you have to conform. And without knowing anything else, the licensee at least has shown they're conforming. I understand counsel for the state's position that if you're bad, you're bad. I partially agree with that, but I think some leeway should be allowed.
Thank you. And I echo your sentiments. For me, I don't want to see anybody fail. I think Nevada is, again, stealing from gaming. We're the gold standard. And I want to make sure that we protect not just our licensees, but we have to protect the public. And so for me, the most important thing is the health and safety of the public. And so again, I don't want anybody to fail. I don't want any business to fail, but I also want to make sure that we protect the public. And then also we have to make sure that this is a fair and equal field. We have other labs that are also complying with all of our regulations. And we're not here to pick winners or losers. We're here to regulate. And so we're going to regulate with all the tools that we have been given. And I know it's been a rocky road because this agency has been handled by many different parts of our state government, but I think that we're pretty solid now and we're standing on our own 2 feet. We may be like a toddler, but I think that we're in good shape. So with that, I tend to agree with you. And I don't know what this is going to look like, but those are good recommendations.
Member Durrett, for the record, I'm in the same ballpark. I agree with what council has said, that you just because these were a while ago and just because they were corrected doesn't mean that there shouldn't be the penalties that would be associated with it. But I also wouldn't support revocation. We have now, because of the way things turned out and because years have passed, even though that's kind of a windfall to the respondent, we have established that they are a good operator, that they're in compliance. So because this is sentencing where we're not looking at strictly what the law is, how do we apply the law? We're looking at various factors that would make us choose how we would treat this licensee. It is compelling that for years they haven't had any compliance issues. So, and I would like to see lower fines than that, only because I do think this was serious conduct. I do think the retesting was a big problem, but because they did immediately stop doing it, I think they were kind of taking advantage of it not being clear in the law. It was a common practice at the time. It's excellent that staff found it and made sure that was no longer the practice. So I think the mission was accomplished. I only want to see the lower fines only because they're not currently making money in cannabis. So $80,000 would be a lot of money. So I would like to see around 30,000, like I said, only because they're not actually making money in cannabis right now. And I think that would be a lot of money still. And still send a message that the state is disciplining them for the conduct. And then I had one thing to raise about the proposed way to treat the categories. I don't think we could do it that way because if there's multiple categories substantiated, then it could be revoked. So I think most of them would have to find a category 5 and then a violation. And then I'm in support of what Member Douglas proposed, other than I would like to see a lower fine than that for the reason I stated. Thank you.
Member Mary, for the record, without being redundant, I would like to agree with the statements that was made by Member Douglas.
Thank you, Member Merritt. Okay, well, it sounds to me like we have a recommendation or a couple of recommendations. My concern is, and you can all chime in, but my concern is again the categories, because there are certain categories, if put together, you have to basically revocate the license, and it sounds to me like that's not in anybody's interest. So how do we craft this or find a common ground with the categories? And then as far as the penalty goes, I think we're just gonna, do a motion and see if we're in agreement with the penalties. And then as far as not a revocation, but remember, Douglas, you said that you were inclined to do a suspension, correct? Okay, so we've got the idea of maybe a suspension with penalties and not a revocation, but then also the categories to me is of concern. Member Durrett, you mentioned that you don't think we could do that. So we have to be able to.
I just laid it out in general.
Your microphone.
I laid it out in general. What I'm looking at basically is 30 days for the various categories. I'd be more specific. They run consecutive, so that comes up to 160 the way I see it, where we have, say, a revocation on a category 3, one violation, or it recommends a suspension. I would agree with that. It would be for 30 days. Then there would be another as to 93, one category 3 as THC issues, and listed as a suspension, and that would be 30 days, and that would be consecutive to the other. So at the end of the day, when I'd go through, I'd come up, there's 6 of them, and they'd run consecutive, which would total out 6 months at the end of the day. But as Member Durrett says, yeah, I can't just lump the 6 months together. I have to fashion it for each one, and I appreciate that. So we have to make rulings as to each one of the separate categories in our findings. And I do understand that. I think that the financial ramifications should stay as they are. I think that's appropriate under the circumstances after hearing everything. I think 30,000 is just totally unacceptable in this matter. So anyway.
Okay, any additional comments? Justice Douglas, are you prepared to make a motion? We're and as I understand it, we're going to be going down the list.
We have to go down the list.
Okay, and just take the ones that are put together, which is 98 and 102. I believe those are the only ones that were together based on the hearing officer's decision. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that there is no violation. We found no violation at our hearing. 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with no violation. So we basically would strike out. We don't have to rule on 80. We could put it on the record that there's no fine because there was no violation, but the 84, 86, 89, 90, 95, and 103 Those are the paragraphs.
Chair, can I ask one more question of the respondent? I would want to ask her, but it's okay if we've already passed that time. What their plans are as far as going back into testing cannabis? Only because if they're planning on doing it, I want to know, are you planning on doing it 3 months, 6 months? Because it would be relevant to the suspension. But if we pass that time, that's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, it might answer some other questions.
Thank you. For the record, Kimberly Maxim Rushton on behalf of LTL. The company has not done any cannabis testing since June of 2023 or 2022. It's been 18 months. If you suspend them for another 180 days and impose an $82,000 fine, they'll surrender their license. They can't afford it. We have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get this pesticide machine to work to the state specifications. It's their tolerance levels. We believe in the accuracy of the test, but they want these tolerance levels. And it's been that challenging because it's that sophisticated of a machine. Can't have just a regular tech come out and do it. So I can tell you that a suspension, I anticipate that basically based on the most recent discussions with Dr. Luttrell and the staff and the most recent discussion with Waters, the laboratory, the instrumentation developer, mainly or mostly 2 weeks to 3 weeks. I think you could consider a suspension retroactive based on the fact that they haven't operated and everything. It still since the same point. But I can just tell you that 180 days, there's no point in continuing the operation or continuing trying to get this pesticide machine to work. They just can't afford it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. 180 days is a lot better than a revocation, and making the suspension retroactive is no penalty at all. They voluntarily stopped operating, so the suspension should be going forward. I would note that I think to make things simpler, you probably could adopt the categories that are there and then pick your own fine and pick your own period of suspension at the end of the order. If council agrees with that, I think I'm just trying to make the format easier.
Yes, sir. That is correct. The regulation does say up to.
Right. So you could make your, adopt whatever violent category you want, and then just put the fine and the suspension days at the end. And I think that would be cleaner for both of us.
It's nice. Yes. Okay. Great.
Just a suggestion.
No, I appreciate that because this is daunting trying to go down the list. And then once you add it up, it ends up being a revocation. And how do you unwind that?
Yeah, I think you could do it that way. And again, like I said, it's up to you how many days to suspend them, but retroactive is to me no fine at all or no discipline at all, and it should be a pretty heavy suspension due to the gravity of the offenses. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe that the category, there are limits on the amount of money for the category. So you'd have to pick a category that would allow for a larger fine if that's the intent of the board.
What she said. So Member Drat, for the record, so if we don't want to revoke, I think that even though I don't want to give the appearance that we're not this, that this licensee would be getting off easy, I think an $80,000 fine and 6-month suspension would have the same impact as a revocation. This isn't a fly-by-night facility in the that isn't communicating with the council's well-respected, has been a former regulator. I believe her representation that would put them out of business, and that is a part of the statutory consideration for what we impose. I want to get there with the other board members and be on the same page. I just would advocate again for a lower fine amount and a suspension that would be a lot less time, because now we know what impact that would have, and I think that needs to be a part of the consideration.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Concerns? Would anybody like to craft a motion based on our discussion? Well, we'll see. We still have to second it and pass it, so.
Could I do this in one motion? If I make a motion, um, find all, my motion would be to find all category 5 violations with warnings, except, let's see. Where are the, except for, paragraph 88 would still be a category 1, and it has to be $35,000 or suspension, right? So so that would be a $35,000 fine, and then
We could go 20.
it says on paragraph
I'm
88.
sorry, I didn't hear who was speaking.
Member Durrett, for the record.
No, somebody else chimed in and I couldn't hear them and I don't know who it was.
It's not on the record. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, it is. Okay. I'm sorry about that. And then,
So just to clarify, this is Dak Harris for the record. The framing of your motion would include a category 5 with the exception for all minus paragraph 88.
yes, except for paragraph 88. And then paragraph 99 would be, there would be no fine, but there would be a 30-day suspension. That would be my motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. Do we have another motion?
Douglas, for the record, I will try to put something together.
I can't hear.
Oh, here we go.
Douglas, for the record. We have this event that happened. We are now stuck with having to do something about it. We understand the difficulty with it. As I indicated before, I'm not into revocation. I think that my motion would be that we accept, we're not obligated to accept blanket recommendations of the administrative law judge. We have the final say as to what comes down. It's recommendations. And understanding that is very important because we are allowed to deviate from that or accept it in total if we see fit. Under the circumstance, I think it's important that we issue within acceptable numbers what's been put forth by the state in this case. As to number 83, a category 3 violation, they've asked for a penalty of $2,500. I would accept that. Maybe that was good timing for the opera, Phantom of the Opera. As stated, there's no violation as to violation 84. As to 85, we have a violation. It's been asked, it's one category 3. The recommendation is $5,000. I would accept that sum. As to 86, there's no violation. As to 87, there's one count 3 violation. It's listed as a 3rd category violation. Recommendation is $10,000. I would accept that amount as part of my motion. As to 88, one category 1 violation. 1st category, the recommendation was 35. I would decrease that to $20,000. As to 89, there was no violation. As to 90, no violation. We do have violations as to 91 and 92. And out of that, though, finding that we have one category 3 violation, I would provide for a suspension of 30 days. As to item number 93, there's one category 3 violation. The recommendation was for a revocation. I would make that a suspension because we're allowed to consider the differences of revocation or suspension, and that would be 30 days, and that would be consecutive to the prior. 94, one category 3. In the recommendation with revocation, I would not revoke. I would recommend suspension for 30 days, and again, consecutive to the priors. 95, we have no violation. 96, one category 3. Again, would not recommend revocation, but a suspension 30 days consecutive. 97, category 3. Again, that would be suspension, 30 days on that, consecutive to the priors. 98 and 102, one category 2, but totaling out $10,000 for the violations, since we're looking at it as a single violation. 99, one category 2 violation. The penalty recommended was $20,000. Cut that down to 10. That would be my recommendation in the motion.
Just Douglas, you stopped at 99. Was that your intent?
Well, no, I was trying to figure out how I fashion what I'm fashioning as to the last 3, 100, 101, and 103, because those were the only 3 that I had not touched upon. And I need to go back and look at something in the record.
In 103, there's no violation.
There's no violation.
So
So
you're
that-
looking at just 100 and 101.
As a 100, one category 2, suspension, 15 days concurrent, and 101, likewise, one category 3, suspension, 15 days concurrent. That would be my motion.
Okay, we've got a motion as stated. And then just tallying it up. Basically, it's, well, you know what? Do we have a second? And then I'll do it in discussion. Do we have a second to Justice Justice Douglas's motion.
Member Merritt, for the record. I was second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Let's have some discussion on the motion. So just to tally it up, I think we've got 30, 60, 90, 120, 140, right? Is it 180 total? 60. Yep.
That was my addition.
Yep, that's right. Okay. 180 suspension, consecutive. And then we've got 10, 20, 25, 35, 45. Is that 4750? Oh, wow. Okay, we definitely did not have math as
We're
our
not
requirements to be
accountants.
on this board.
Showing 57,500 and 180 days.
That's what I have. Correct. 57,500 and 180 day suspension consecutive. That is what is before us. Any additional discussion?
Okay, Member Dret, for the record, I know this could create a procedural nightmare, but I think I know how to do this. Can I move to amend to 90 days suspension? So to move to amend that 91, 93, and 94 would be 30-day suspensions, 96, 97, and 100 and 101 would not entail a suspension, or those latter suspensions would be consecutive with the first 90 days. So move to make that amendment. I think the procedure would be that it would be open for a second, and then if nobody seconds, then my motion dies. But I think that we would take a vote on that motion, right?
It's the motion on the floor is my motion. I'd have to accept it. I don't accept it. So you can vote what I put up or down and go forward with a new motion.
So that would be like a friendly amendment.
Well, I think the process though is that the motion gets the motion to amend gets a vote.
So
right, whether the first mover accepts it or not.
Do we have?
But he would have to be open to that amendment.
I'm
and
sorry,
then
can
the
I get
second
one
as
at a
well.
time speaking, please?
Dak Harris for the record. So first there would need to be an agreement to accept the amendment, and then also Member Mayor would also have to agree to accepting that amendment as part of her second.
Okay, all right. So it was rejected, so
Correct.
it died. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're back to our motion. Any other discussion? 180-day suspension, 52,500 in penalties.
57.
I'm sorry, 57,500. Any additional comments? Okay. Having no comment, go ahead and I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
And just to be clear, my understanding is that this is not effective until council is served with the final order.
Correct.
Just
Because
want to
there's
clarify that for the record.
because there's appeal rights, correct? Yes, okay. All right.
The next agenda item is item number 9, which is the briefing from the chair and executive director. Other than welcoming Dr. Mazarana and just thank you everybody for all your hard work. This was we had a lot of pretty trying items on the agenda, so we appreciate all your hard work and your patience, and thank you to the public for your patience as well. With that, I know that our director has some items to cover or just some things to say, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'll keep this brief. I know it's been a long day. So a couple housekeeping things. Just if you're still tuned in, want to remind everyone the TPMA lead market study and survey is still live on our website. It's going to be open a couple more months or another month or so. So please distribute that wide and far as we'd like as much feedback as we can get. Another reminder, Cannabis Advisory Commission meeting is next Friday, February 23rd at 10 a.m. Want to thank the incredible work done by the subcommittee on rescheduling and descheduling. It'll be presented to the larger advisory commission for review and ratification to make its way to the legislature. Also want to thank, in addition to the subcommittee, special thanks to Ashley Balducci for her leadership on that. Also, as many of you know, we held an open regulation workshop on January 31st. So wanted to thank everyone that participated in that, whether through public comment, submission, or attendance. As always, we appreciate the feedback and welcome the opportunities to fine tune these regulations. As the chair mentioned earlier, I'd like to welcome Dr. Mazarana to the team. Happy to report the team, as expected, rose to the occasion, put together the training outlined and contemplated in SB 328 for new board members. So we had the first opportunity to do that. So the doctor participated in that as a member on Monday. So thank you to the team as well for that. Jumping into that, as the chair just mentioned, these can be long days, and the colossal amount of work the team puts in is very important, and it gets us to these days and in the 5 hours now that we've spent together. Just special thanks. I think Ms. Connor said it best. Chief Staley and his team did a great job, so thank you. Also thank you, Deputy Director Miles, for your incredible work on White Pine. And just kind of a last thing before, actually, one more thing. We made history today. We may not think that, but SB 277 is working. Thank you to the board for their efforts on that. We had a petitioner. It came, worked as intended. So that doesn't happen without this incredible board and without Chief Gilbert. So special thanks to them. And lastly, some really great news. We also made additional history today. Press release will be going out shortly. Some exciting news. Smoke and Mirrors on Sammy Davis Drive Jr. is the first cannabis consumption lounge to pass the final CCB inspection. And as of late last night, the state issued its first license. Again, release will go out today. But I wanted to thank both my team. She had to step out, but Kara, Chief Cronkite, and her incredible team as well for working with Smoke and Mirrors and the Thrive Cannabis Marketplace to make sure that went through. So it was truly a collaborative effort. Thanks again to Chief Cronkite and team. And we're excited to see what these lounges can do. So thank you, Chair. That's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can all go see what a lounge looks like. Okay, so with that, we will go on to our next agenda item, which is the next meeting date of our board is March 21st, 2024. And next is items for future agendas. This is for discussion only.
Can I squeeze something under this? Member Durrett, for the record, I just wanted to say, give a shout out to Senator Harris, who passed SB 277, and really something that should have been done a long time ago. And I think it was a valiant effort on her part.
All right, thank you. Okay, no other items. Okay, then we'll go on to our final public comment. Again, this is public comment.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, Chair members. Good afternoon, Chair and new Executive Director. I'm James Tom, and all the distinguished members and staff as well. For the record, Timothy, my name is Timothy Eliado speaking, and on behalf of the Cannabis Lounge, I didn't receive a license. Didn't make it through the initial random number selector. I just want to also extend my thanks to the governor's office, Governor Lombardo, especially Sony and others that helped me basically through it. I believe it's been an 11 months process, and I finally received what I've been waiting for over almost 2 years, almost a year and a half now, a response from the CCB. Unfortunately, under Tyler Clements' leadership, that didn't happen. So I would just like to say thank you to James Hum, Executive Director James Hum, for at least making the initiative to do that. And I would like to state that there are a few things that I disagree with, but of course, that's what brings up room for litigation. And for someone like me, unfortunately, I do not have all the funds because I've already exhausted as much funds as I have already, but there's still hope. I'd like to address that on here on the statement that I received. And for the record, I would like to state that CCB stated that CCB does not know how many CEIC graduates there were, which has to do with the 7 out of the 10 licenses that were given to the CEIC graduates. So also, it would also indicated that it was the CEIC didn't know how many graduates applied for the Cannabis Consumption Lounge. Unfortunately, I would like to remind the CCB, it was the CCB did not know. I'd like to remind the CCB that on October 25th, 2022, this happened.
For the record, morning, and I just wanted to thank you for the ease of the consumption lounge application process. So we successfully submitted for our cohort, the Pathway to Ownership program, successfully submitted our first application yesterday. It was a breeze. We will be submitting 4 more today. So I just wanted to thank you for the work that you've done and for giving us. Thank you.
I would like to, with all due respect, somebody's lying. This was an unfair advantage. I was promised that there would be a third-party agency that was going to investigate this process. Unfortunately, the CCB ended up investigating the CCB and provided me with this response. For the record, this is an inviting time for the public to really get involved. That's the reason I'm making this publicly, because I would like the public to really know what's happening behind closed doors. That's the reason I'm going to be here each and every single time. With the little resources that I have, I'm going to keep fighting. And for anyone that still believes that our government that we truly believe in, if they abuse their power, they must face the same consequences as we do when we commit crimes. And also, I would like to state that what am I supposed to do as an individual who played by the rules? I literally had a nonprofit organization before even we went to a for-profit model. And also, and then I'm forced back into the illicit market. I have a talent, I have a skill. What happens if you deny me? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to make a living? How do I make a living? I just played a tape in which basically contradicts everything you said to me in this letter. Contradicts it all. A lady, Aisha Goins, was appointed as a subcommittee. She chaired it. So now the CCB is claiming a disassociation from that entity. Even Aisha herself is claiming disassociation from CEIC. So What is going on here? Who's responsible? Who's lying? I think the corruption is clear. I think it will, and it's obviously that it wasn't a fair advantage. And also with the merits, I'm listening to the merit system when it comes to the next licensing process, because unfortunately ours has passed. But could there be an amendment or something included that has to do with those that helped the medical cannabis infrastructure in place that could also get a point or two? Because unfortunately, we're not growing we're not growing law firms in these cannabis facilities. We're not growing CEOs in these facilities. We're growing cannabis.
Okay, you're 3 minutes.
Who has?
You can just wrap it up.
Who we need? I have a horticulturalist background. I'm not a lawyer, but I have a horticulturalist background. Please help. I'm forced back to the illicit. I have never participated in the illicit market. I have done everything I could possibly do to do right by the system, but the system keeps telling us, keep moving on.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting today, and we will see you back here next month. Thank you very much. Bye. Thank you, Member Merritt.